Okay, welcome to FPL Last Resort.
I'm Richie. And that's Danny. Anyway.
Danny.
Yeah,
that was the thing.
I had a plan for that was a lot better, and it didn't work. So that's why it's embarrassing and very, very white middle class. You know. And for everyone complaining in the chat, this is free, by the way, just to remind you. Anyway, but yeah, good evening and good tidings to all. Lovely to have everyone with us this evening. Alon, you're back for time 3.
I'm a regular. I mean, it's not even a thing now. We just chat in WhatsApp and I'm just on. It's not like some big, plan and schedule, but it's just like, just jumping on with Rich and Danny.
It's hard to resist, isn't it? It's the kind of three amigos. I don't know if you spotted the reference I made to Pedro Pascal in promoting this pod.
I saw it and I loved it.
He's the 4th sexiest guy ever, apparently, which is a bit dubious. But anyway,
insane,
the other 3, not saying anything, but could be. Well, we should begin. I mean, how was your summer? How was your game week 1? Are you happy? Is everything good again, or are you now miserable because it's all back?
No, summer was great. It wasn't long enough, as always, I guess. FPL is great. It's great to have the footy back. I mean, it's mostly great to just watch the matches. Like, I was just so excited to wake up on 7 a.m. on Saturday and watch games all day. My girlfriend was less excited, but that is what it is. But yeah, I'm psyched. Everything happy, good. It's all downhill from here. Is what I'm trying to say.
You bring the good. Yeah, it does seem to be that because your early season form seems to be like a regular occurrence. I swear you always smash it out of the park with those 4.5 picks and all of that kind of stuff. And Danny and I do sensible things, and it never works. Speaking of which, Danny, how are you? How are you feeling after the first weekend?
Bit flat, to be honest. In terms of FPL wise, obviously I'm glad, I'm happy it's all back. It's great to be back and stuff like that. But FPL wise, it's not the greatest feeling. I was historically, and obviously there's a lot of luck involved. I was historically a good starter for a long time. Last season I didn't start well, and I kind of put that down to like the fact that I wasn't as engaged as amongst other things, which I wasn't because I had such an unenjoyable season the season before.
Yeah,
but this season I very much was engaged. So, and I've not started particularly well after game week. I was just game week 1. It means nothing, and it doesn't. But no, I still feel fine. I mean, we'll talk all about that, about how you feel and whether whether you're okay or panicking, all that sort of stuff. But no, I mean the Leeds clean sheet on Monday night was a nice way to finish it off. Anyway, I sort of low key just kind of always felt like that was coming as well. I was like, well, I'll wait for my road on clean sheet and I'll feel a little bit better. And obviously then it came. Even that was slightly annoying, by the way, because like Goodmanson, the legendary Goodmanson from last time, talked about him and didn't go there, and he just looked like so much more of a threat than
he did. I kind of feel like we went down the middle there, though, because at least if we'd picked Bijol, because I know we were both keen on Bijol. Basically, Alon, I don't know if you've read up on this guy. He's just a big guy, a bit like Milenkovic or something. So we're addicted to those guys. But at least we kind of got the happy medium return, I was pretty pleased with that in the end, to be fair. But Danny raises a theme for us for this pod, which is, should we panic? Is there anything to kind of worry about, immediately overreact, do things, on the flip? So that can be something that we look at a little bit today, because we're all going to be shaking up our teams, ruining everything, scraping it about, because Alan's already got the perfect structure. I mean, he's already got. I mean, Alon, do you want to tell us kind of how you've kind of structured your big guys in your squad?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned last year I was absolutely flying. I think I was like, I don't know, maybe 200K after 6 weeks, and everyone else was kind of like 2 million. So it was just like, I guess I'm just gonna finish top 5K this year or whatever, and then I fucked it all up. But my theory going into last season was just like, I want the most expensive guys in all the position groups, because I truly believe that like flexibility is the key to stability, and being able to easily move and transfer to anyone else in the game is an essential part of having a good team to start with. and rolling transfers and all that good stuff that we want to do. And then also just how much better. I remember last year there was a big debate on like, is Mo worth it over Saka and or Palmer, and pretty much everyone unanimously agreed that no, he wasn't. And I just kept saying like, he's so much better. Like he's so much more of a sure thing than those guys, even though they had, they were coming off great seasons. And I ended up being more right than I even thought was possible, because obviously Mo had the crazy season. But I just kind of went Mo and Haaland, forget about it. Don't even think about not owning them. I think Walsh in our Game Week 1 episode was just kind of like, if I don't have Haaland and he braces against Wolves, which he ended up exactly bracing against Wolves, I'm going to wild card. I'm going to completely panic. What am I doing? I don't have Haaland. City look great. And that ended up happening basically exactly for a lot of people who didn't have Haaland. I mean, Mo, pretty much everyone has Mo, but I think going both was like a little bit of a differential.
I think people were mostly tuning in for Danny to admit that he was wrong on Palmer, and he's going to, mess around his team. He's going to stick Haaland in there straight away. He's going to admit defeat, that sort of thing. Before I give Danny a chance to say anything about that, Brian in the chat, quite rightly, we should always panic. That's very helpful advice for anyone who's just started FPL. You're probably quite correct in that.
Yeah.
And actually, early thing to jump into if I can, because on these kind of themes, actually, before we do talk about proper stuff, Alon, we should just reference, of course, you had a bit of an image makeover over there.
There we go.
FMLFPL. It's looking pretty swift.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not really me, I have to say. Like, I miss the old, like, sort of vintage, outdated, minimal kind of look. That's just more my style. But, with help from Cole, who does our GIFs, and my girlfriend, who's a designer, and feedback from me and Walsh, we kind of settled on this one as our favorite of the bunch, and it's getting a good reaction. So, it's doing what we hoped it would do. I think it's stands out a little more. It's a little more fun, a little more of our like personality and stuff like that. So that was.
But it's not going on the mugs.
TBD. TBD. Someone's got to win one first, and then we'll figure it out.
Danny, you're going to do our mugs, right? One day you're the mug guy.
Absolutely not. No.
I've only got beer. I've got someone's beer out there. The above.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no mugs. So I'm nothing in the mug train. I wanted to just whilst things are pretty early on here as well, because Fresh, I think Alon may have just joined or be about to, because I said he's got to compete against our other kind of regular guests and that sort of thing, because I think it's pretty important. Not quite sure who's our highest ranking regular guest, but it's not going terribly well for any of them as far as I'm aware. But our mini league, lots of people now join that, so thank you for doing so. For audio, because I'm going to try and get better at this, it's LZKI6K, and that first one doesn't look like an L, so I'll just keep saying it until people sort of swallow it whole. But LZKI6K. I will. You won't be able to read it probably because it's so minute. But very quickly on the leaderboard after game week 1, because some of you might only ever hit this once and that sort of thing. But I wanted to shout out 2 people here. I mean, obviously, I have to say well done to John Edgar, who's on 83 points, which is obviously ruining all of us here. But number 7, if you go right down here we are. Expect to lose. I looked at this earlier. I was like, no. You're joking me. That's my father-in-law.
Wow.
I know. So I'm never going to live it down. So the next time we speak, I'm sure he will remind me of this. But number 7, congratulations, Les Smith. That's the last time you'll be in the top 10.
And what did you see, Rich? What did you see? Like, what was the picture you sent me? Like, was it, or what did you see? I can't remember. What was he watching? Come on, out him.
Oh, okay. Well, I think Les is an avid viewer of Big Andy. So Big Andy's been giving him some good tips. But
let's talk.
I think Les follows anyone particularly. He's his own man, But he's got a front line of Wood and Haaland, and I was like, oh crap.
And now we're all learning the value of SEO. I think if you just type in FPL advice anywhere, you get Big Andy, baby. He's just Big on Andy. Every YouTube screen. Yeah.
There you go. So You know, that's where you go for your proper advice. This is where you go if you want sort of 2 hours. Maybe you're in an airport lounge and you run out of books and that sort of thing, and you come here, and it might be a good way to sort of fall asleep. Eno as well, one of our regulars as well, who was he's a bit unlucky with the full crew pick, but we'll come back to that a bit later. I say unlucky. I mean, I think everyone but me spotted the fact that was a terrible idea. I didn't realize how terrible, but we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Anyway, I've put this up now. We were talking about this before the pod started. As it turns out, neither Danny or Alon were big into The Simpsons back in the day, so I realised that this is probably not as appropriate as I thought it was. But if there anyone who does remember, and hopefully someone in the chat will agree with me, but this was the scene back in the day where they there's a crisis of some sort, and it's like, is it time to panic? Well, yes, it is, Kent. And I suppose I just wanted to ask you both for your kind of reactions after game week 1. Is there anything that makes you feel like you need to panic, that you need to do anything? Is there anyone who you would kind of advise to get on quickly and to react? Or are you quite content to absorb more information, take your time? Because I think a few pods this week have already asked this question of, you know, how much do you react and how much do you sort of simmer down? I'm going to start with you, Danny, because I know that you've had a chance to think about this theme over the last sort of day or so, so you've probably got a plethora of good advice. But are you someone who tends to react quickly, or is it a play-by-play situation?
Well, I don't necessarily react quickly. I've definitely not been thinking about this too much, by the way. I've heard this, I think it was today on The Wire, it made me think about it, but someone asked a question, which I'll repeat in a second, which I think is like quite a common thing, so I thought it would be interesting to talk about. But I need to get my brain in gear because I've just had a random phone call that I'll tell you about later, which have just completely thrown me. No, because somebody said, like, how do we know whether to panic or whether to kind of move or panic, or whether we to be patient, is kind of the thing, which I suppose, like, kind of I think I've heard it a few times, that sort of thing. So it's just kind of interesting to me that that's quite a common theme and a common question. And the first thing that comes to mind, which is, it sounds a bit brutal, so sorry to get the brutal stuff out of the way, and I don't want to sound like a condescending bastard straight away, and that's not what I mean, but this is the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that. So I'm just being honest, is because I kind of think if you don't know whether to be patient or to react, then that's a problem. Because that, we talk all the time about the process, didn't we, on this last time Alon was here, and we talked about, like, what is your process, and therefore, like, having no regrets. And I kind of feel like if you're asking the question, like, how do we know whether to be patient or react, then you don't have a process necessarily in that regard, which is a problem, I think. You're just kind of in the ether somewhere, just floating around, waiting for someone to tell you what to do, and then be guided and then do it. And the reason why I feel quite strongly about that is because that's a big problem for, like, you, like, your mental health and how you're going to play FPL, because FPL is just a horrible, torturous game that if you're kind of waiting to kind of find out from others what you should do in terms of being patient or reacting or making a transfer, I just think that's a big problem. So that's the first thing, like, to think about. Which isn't easy, by the way, at all. Like, having a process or knowing what to do in that situation isn't easy at all. It's like, I struggle with that, like, and I have to find a way out of that. Like, I have to find a way, like, what is my process? Like, how do I know? Because that's what can I find that helps me know that it's okay to either be patient or to make a move? So I was trying to think about, like, what those things are. And I think, so I was trying to find, like, what the facts and the truths are within that. And, I think, first of all, like, and everyone says this, but it's really important, but it's one game week. So it's such a small sample size. And so, but that means that we suffer from all sorts of biases as a result of that, because it's like an availability heuristic, isn't it? It's like it's all that we've got available. So we're bound to panic because we've only got really information. Like, we weight it so heavily, this game week 1 versus everything last season and the end of last season and the long-term stuff. We weight it so heavily because we've all been waiting for FPL for all these months. We do see some differences, and we see teams being a bit different, and we pick up on a lot of differences, which those differences in a way are natural because it's the start of a new season. So teams are fresher, or some teams are fresher than others. Some teams have got new players. So we really pick up and weigh heavily all these differences, which triggers a bit of panic because you think, shit, this is nowhere near, like, kind of necessarily what I had in my head, or it's way further away than I imagined things were going to be. So we kind of naturally suffer from that. And so one truth you have to tell yourself is really, like, understanding the randomness there and the kind of, and trying to weight that a lot less than you perhaps are, and just thinking like, I need to see 3 or 4 weeks of randomness, like call it randomness, because I don't want to call it that, because I know it's not random. I know football isn't random, and I hate when people use that terminology too much and make it sound like it's not that it's all numbers or it's all random. But if you tell yourself that it's all random, and I want 3 or 4 weeks of this randomness, I think it helps you, that kind of dialogue, that kind of thinking helps you to just weigh it slightly less, if you see what I'm saying, like, while still knowing that it isn't necessarily random. Like it's so hard. And like, so again, like, I think I often say, like, I say this throughout the season, and it's kind of even more relevant in Game Week 1, is it's not about the players that you don't own. It sounds really silly. It's about the players that you do own. And so that means when you say that, like, it's about the players you do, and that means looking afresh at your team. For example, I can look afresh at my team, for example, and I see, for example, Ollie Watkins is playing Brentford. Okay. And so that's just flat out factually, that's just a great fixture if he's playing, fingers crossed, you know. It doesn't matter what happened Game Week 1. There's just an example. Like Strand Larson, for example, I can look at that and go, right, okay, he blanked again. We'll talk about him more, but he's playing Bournemouth. So that's just, again, it doesn't matter the point total or what I've got. It's just that that's a really good fixture for him. You know what I mean? And I know this sort of stuff sounds really obvious, but you've just got to be careful of all the bias, you know, because we're humans, we're storytelling species, so we come up with all these kind of narratives. This is just what we do, you know. So you'll hear so many narratives about why certain players are great, why we should have seen certain things, why Haaland is banging, and we should have seen, you know, we knew that's what City were going to do, and you know, some of it's true, but to an extent, because I would never say it's all not true, but it's just all about weighting that. And so just the last thing I want to, like, just the last thing I was just kind of thinking about that is, it's because it's really hard, because obviously, yeah, I got 53 points, I think, in the first game week, and it's not nice. You kind of think, oh God, you know, 20 points behind, some 50 points behind, some. I saw people with 100. And so, of course, you think immediately, like, you know, oh crap, like there's certain players. I mean, we'll talk about that more, and some things that I'm disappointed in and some things that I didn't expect. But another way to think about it, again, as a kind of fact that I was thinking about, is given the randomness, given that we really don't know, things will settle down so much more in 6 or 7 or 8 weeks anyway, like they always do. And given the fact that we really don't know what's going to happen week to week at the moment, one thing that you can do to actually ensure that you're in a position of strength or more strength, even if it potentially means, like, worst case scenario, you end up with 3 or 4 bad weeks points wise, is actually rolling transfers. And this is like something I'm going to talk about all season probably, because it seems like a simple message, but I think that everybody always underestimates the position of strength that you can put yourself in by having more free transfers. Like it's especially at the start, you know, when we've all got these price points at the start and we say, for example, we've got 1 transfer this week, making that 1 transfer when we know times 2, times 3, that's how much different everything's going to be in a week, because of, again, of another week of randomness. And if you've used that transfer, you're kind of back to square one. We've got even more randomness, and now you've got even less flexibility than, you know, in a way. You've got the same as flexibility, but you've kind of got no flexibility still. Yeah, so you can kind of guarantee yourself flexibility and power with 3 or 4 transfers. I mean, it's a game-changing thing in the game. We used to can't even remember the days when we could only get 2 transfers. But 3 or 4 transfers is like almost a wild card. You know, you can change your whole structure, change all of your major hitters, or whether you've got a big defender and all that sort of stuff. So all I'm saying there is you can ensure some control and some power and some strength, which will mean future points, by being patient, even if I hate that word, actually, patient, but by being a little bit rational and just thinking like, okay, let's just see out another week and see what happens. At least you're in that additional place of strength. Now, the final thing I want to say, because I don't want to just be one-sided, just to keep it two-sided, is I'm not like totally, it's not a rule. It's not a rule for me to just be like, okay, I'm going to sit on it because it's all random. And this links to, like, how do you know? So you have to find something that you do know. So in terms of individual players, for me, quite an interesting player is Reindeer, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
So for me personally, my approach, and this doesn't mean it's right. I mean, I started with him, thankfully, for these reasons. But if I hadn't started with him, he's the kind of player at his price and what I saw in Game Week 1 and the team that he plays for in Man City and what I think about him as a player. He's the kind of player that would potentially, like, make me sacrifice that flexibility and actually just get on it early because of what I think it could happen. Because But again, that's not because of what everyone else is saying or because they think, oh yeah, Man City or 5.5. You have to know it. That would be me watching him and going, nah, I'm not. I'm getting on board with this. Like, that's one of those examples where I would move on him now for like a lot of players, probably knowing myself, because I can be quite aggressive in the start of the season as well. So that's all I want to say to keep it. Do you see what I mean? And that's because I'm just like, that's where I would know with someone like Reindeers. I remember a couple of years ago, in fact, a good few years ago, it was Alonso and Frazier or something like that for Bournemouth. It was years ago. And it was like, I felt like I knew, and I took a -4 to get them in like game week 3. And they got 19 points and 20 points the following week. It was like the best outcome I've ever had in transfer.
Wow.
But anyway, so yeah. So what do you guys think about this panic topic?
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking to myself that actually any answer that I and possibly Alon might give, there was always the but Reindeers at the end. But Reindeers is almost like the answer to everything here, because he I do think is the exception to the rule. A good example of this is our friend and occasional contributor here, Jossie. I think he went down. He had Jorginho. And has gone down to, I think Walsh had this situation, didn't he?
Yeah.
Possibly Alon as well, and he's made the move to Reindeers. I mean, he loves a hot weekend transfer, Jossie, anyway. And I think that might be the exception to the rule. But when you were explaining that, Danny, it just made me think actually that about two things really. One is it's interesting to think in terms of whether patience, I agree, is kind of an imperfect term, but generally I've always admired that as an asset more than I have sort of quick-wittedness and rashness or acting quickly and that sort of thing. I've tried to gradually make myself calmer, and it hasn't worked, obviously, but it's been an attempt over time. The other thing I was thinking is that in a way, with racking up transfers, I've been trying to almost visualize it a little bit differently. It would almost be helpful to visualize sort of 3, 4, 5 transfers as though it was an additional premium in your team that other people couldn't have if they only had like 0 or 1 transfers. Do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes it's something that it's quite hard for people to visualize mentally, but to think of that deferred gratification of what it will feel like in a couple of weeks' time when you have maximum utility, this ability to pivot in a way that others just simply can't, is such an asset, and it's something that I'm really interested in. Good example this week, right? Someone like Fulkrug. Now, we had this conversation here last week. I made that bet. It's partly a little bit of fan bias and that sort of thing, no doubt. But there's such a limited utility in acting on that weak spot in my team. It's clearly, obviously the weakness in my team. I will move him on at some point, no doubt. But there's such limited utility I have to play with. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to, Thiago, etc., who's, not exactly pulled up trees himself. He doesn't get 6 points, etc., but barely a sniff in the game, that sort of thing. It's much more sensible to have the utility of having that flexibility later on. But I've talked enough. Alon, what's your position on this? I mean, are you a patient, penitent man?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I feel like there's so much to respond to. I don't even know where to begin. But yeah, I mean, I think with the Reindeers thing, it's he's kind of an example of like how can I word this? Like disentangling what things were intended to happen, meaning like the players/managers are tactically doing something, trying to do something, and it worked. Which things are just kind of the bounce of the ball, or the ball went in the net and we're overreacting. Which, if you read too much of like the tactical people, their assumption is everything's intentional. You look at those people who make the pitch boards, and it's like, this guy cut here so this guy could go here, and this genius move and it's like, all right, they didn't script everything in a football match. It's not even possible. But then the other side of that is like the other extreme of that is like the more traditional, maybe former footballer pundit who thinks nothing's intentional. It's all effort and skill and trying harder and wanting it more. Right. And so the reason I bring those up is because I think with someone like Reindeers, like obviously he's not going to score every half chance he gets, which is what that goal was. I mean, edge of the box, left-footed, moving sort of away from goal, and he put it in the corner. He's not going to do that every time. But the intentional part of it, I think, is just where and how he was playing, which was a completely free roll in the box, crashing the box, the last pass or the pass before the last pass. And it just seemed like, wow. I mean, if he didn't score, but he still played that same way, I think all the same alarm should have been going off, right? Because it's just like, man, if he keeps playing this role in this City team, I mean, he's a joke of a pick at 5'5", like an absolute ludicrous pick. So you almost have to separate the fact that, okay, the ball went in the goal, like forget about that. And vice versa, like when you think about guys who I think played poorly, like a Fulkrug or like an Ollie, did something change? Was there some sort of intentional tactical shift, or did they just have a bad game? I mean, you look at Fulkrug, right? It's like he was bad. West Ham were bad. I mean, he got 2 shots off. That's kind of his career average. Like, he kind of just did what he does. And imagine like he just hit one worldie or something on one of those half chances. Literally no one would be even considering getting rid of him, because they'd be like, oh yeah, he's 6-0. He got a couple of chances. He happened to bang one, thanks for that. And that's all you can really expect from a 6-0 striker on a potentially bottom 5 team, right? Or someone like Ollie, right? I mean, there's the red card, tough fixture. There's just really no reason to panic at all with someone like Ollie, not just because he has a good Gameweek 2 fixture, but because we have so much history of Ollie. Like, but basically what I'm trying to say is when it's a bad performance like that, you just toss it in the average. You just say, okay, that was a bad game, but we have 3 years of Ollie. Just toss it in the average. He's still a good pick and a good player, right? But when it's maybe something that feels more intentional, like this is not what happened, so I'm not trying to say it is, but imagine there's a world where Ollie was just doing all the like midfield buildup and like, as Rodgers and Malen or something were like more playing striker and Ollie was just nowhere near the box. That would be way more of a red flag to me than him just playing poorly in one game. Because then I'm like, what's Emery on about here? Like, what is he thinking here? And may he try and do this again, because a 0-0 isn't a bad result for them really against Newcastle. So that would worry me a lot more, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I just think it's a lot about FPL is a lot about just like calibrating your beliefs and becoming comfortable with the fact that like there is literally no such thing as a sure thing ever, except maybe, Mo in Gameweek 1 or something. But you'll never have all the information you want ever, and you still have to act the exact same way. Mm-hmm. So it's all a balance. But I agree with you guys. I mean, ultimately, I think I just said what I said about Reindeers is just like, he just seems different than the other guys who, like, I don't even know who are the trendy transfers in or something, Ballard or like, like even Semenyo, right? Like, he is a very good player. I think everyone who watches the Prem knows that. And he played really well, and he took his chances really well. But was there anything at all different about Semenyo in that game or Semenyo in 38 games last season? I mean, to me, no. The ball just went in the net. And, like, that doesn't scream pick to me. I'm not thinking, like, oh, my God, Semenyo is going to score 25 goals this year. I'm just like, oh, yeah, classic Semenyo. Takes 5 shots a game, and sometimes they go in, But meanwhile, he's been transferred in by, 600,000 people. And I'm like, I don't know. Shrug,
No, I completely agree. And I mean, Semenyo is slightly different. We'll talk about him when we get to Bournemouth, because but I broadly agree it's not much different to what we've seen before. I mean, I think we're both saying the same things in different ways, which is interesting, because that's what I meant. I kept using the word no, and what I mean by that is like I'm saying that has to be subjective. In a way, like when I say no, when I say I know something, it's kind of vernacular. It's how I think about, like, almost instinctively or emotionally. I feel like I know that as a right decision is when I say I know. I don't know something's going to happen. I don't know Reindeer is going to be a great player.
Right.
I know that my process and my decision about why I would rush him in or would want him in the team is right for me, which is obviously all that matters in FPL, because like you said, it's also random.
Yeah.
And that's how I would feel good about it. And it's funny because you were saying part of that kind of subjective process for me is like piecing together clues. It's a bit like, in university, like when you're trying to detect people who've used, is a bit of a random analogy, but when you're trying to detect the use of AI, inappropriate use of AI, and like people just copy and paste in an essay, there's no way of doing that, but you have to piece together like lots of clues, and it's still actually ultimately subjective. Like I say to people, I can look at an essay because I was think about this stuff a lot, and I'd be like, no, like I know that essay is AI generated, and they'll be looking at me like, no, you don't know, like there's no way to know, and I'm like, no, fucking no, trust me, like it's all the clues, it's absolutely nailed on. And with Reindeers, it's kind of similar, because like you say, it's so many separate things for me where I'm going, where I'm piecing them all together. And it was pre-season that I did start to think about it more. He wasn't in my team until, it wasn't that he scored in the friendlies, but because he scored in the friendlies, it made me go and inspect this guy. I was like, right, actually, I need to know about this dude. And that's one of my weaknesses in the game, actually, is I don't pay enough attention to players who play in Europe until they come in the Premier League. And sometimes you can be a bit too late, because I almost think it's too noisy, and I just want to see them play in the Premier League first.
Yeah.
But then I was looking at this guy, and it's just like, it's all those pieces where it was like his attitude as well. I mean, he's 27, so he's like prime age. Obviously, he's just coming off a great season. And it is a bit about the way he moves in the team, and just like his attitude and the way he was telling people where to pass, telling people to do this. And obviously the positions he's getting into. And it was all that talk of, Pep had said we need a number 8. We'd had this thing about, he'd had this phone call saying, that was his phone call saying, we need a number 8, can you be it? And you sort of think, Bernardo Silva is definitely old now. Gundogan we know is old, and just La Liga killed him. Foden is still untrustworthy and probably pissed half the time, or don't know what's happening with him, but it's just like, and like amongst all this stuff, and Rodri was injured and Kovacic is injured, and amongst all this stuff is this dude who just looks totally fresh, totally the right attitude, and looks like an insane like ability to box crash. And then you've got the Man City tactics of what a box crasher means when you've got the ball the whole time, and your fullbacks are always cutting it back, and there's always all that sort of stuff. And you think, and obviously 5.5, blah blah blah, and it's just piecing together loads of clues. That's what it is. That's what that sort of subjective process is. That should lead you to tip you over that line of transfer or no transfer, and it does have to be like quite an awful lot of stuff. I just want to say, like, as well, like on your point, because it's absolutely true. And what's interesting as well is the impact of like how something happens with players. So, for example, because we're probably all we've probably all got something kind of slightly wrong, because I haven't heard this much in pods this week, for example. So is Thiago. So take, for example, the example of Thiago. Actually, I took, and we should probably all take, like an awful lot from what happened with him, even if no one's talking about him, because he just got his 6 points and he didn't do much.
Yeah.
But this is where we're tricked as well about how those points come about, or how those changes come about, because actually I thought he would start anyway, and I also thought he'd be on penalties. I just did slightly worry about the minutes, and also, like we said on the pod last week, I was worried about the price point and not being able to come off if something went wrong. But actually what we saw, because everyone's been saying how crap Brentford are, but and Rich, I can see you pulling the face about the price point with Fulcrum, but actually it's pretty good news for you, because what we saw was we've got a guy who is nailed at the moment, and I'm not worried about them signing another striker, because I think they're just going to play him alongside him. We've said this before, he's the record signing, scored loads of goals in the past, but what we saw was that he is playing, he is on penalties, he did play the whole game. Brentford did nothing, but despite that, he actually had a really good chance. I think it was like a defender that did just about get to the ball, so it sort of skied over. What it actually was without a fraction of a touch, it was like a 3-yard shot that was a nailed on goal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he scored a penalty. So, but nobody's talking about Thiago at all. When actually what we've got there is an incredible amount of information of what now looks like, if you didn't already think so, a really solid pick, a 6 million nailed striker, who I think's nailed, again, subjective, at least for now, who's on penalties and, played an awful lot of minutes. And actually he did get a couple of chances, and certainly one big chance. Do you know what I mean? It's quite funny, isn't it, that what we're talking about in terms of how that information is provided to us as well seems to impact like what we think. But he's obviously, that is different, because he's not a panic buy. He's not oh shit, needs to use my transfer to get Thiago in. But it's interesting.
I'm considering it. I mean, spoiler alert for later, but I'm already considering it. We talked about him on ours. I'm on Jimenez. There's people on Welbeck. There's people on Fulkrug. I think everyone in that sort of range should probably consider him. For different reasons, but we'll get to that later. But I just wanted to also respond to you, is like, with Reindeers, it'll be interesting to like look back at this, right? Because similar to you, I wasn't really considering any City midfielder until the injury news came out with Rodri and Gundo. And I was like, all right, I mean, he's got to start, right? He's got to play. And now I'm going to look into him, and he's so cheap. And like in a selfish, perverted way, I wish he didn't score. I wish Haaland scuffed that one chance and his left-footed shot went wide. And someone like me and Walsh would have been on the pod like, dude, this guy was ridiculous. And like everyone should own him and no one's going to own him. But, you know, obviously now he's like a huge bandwagon. But what will also be interesting, and this is like, you know, one of my favorite parts about just football in general, not really even FPL, is like 5 weeks from now, it'll be fascinating to look back at this conversation because there's every chance he just blanks 3 games in a row. But if he blanks 3 games in a row and is still doing A, B, C, attacking, crashing, getting shots, creating shots, I'm going to be sitting there saying, hold Reindeers. You know, like hold. He's so good. Like all I need to see is him start a game with Rodri and do the same role. And there's another world where he blanks 4 in a row and he's not doing the same role at all. And it's like, all right, that was just one weird game and Wolves were really bad. And, you know, he's kind of just another number 6 and he doesn't attack at all. And then it's going to be like, yeah, panic sell, you know, right back out of the teams just as fast as he went in. It's just fascinating.
I mean, on that, I mean, actually, you spoke about it on your pod earlier this week, but it immediately made me think we're that close for that face on the screen there, not being Reinders and being Oscar Bob instead, right?
Oh yeah,
and then people were having a completely different conversation. We're probably a couple of minutes away from Mo blanking game week 1, and everyone talking about that.
Yep.
So as Danny says, you do still have to kind of embrace the idea that we're already in a period where we have 1 week of information currently, there'll be another one this week and so on and so forth, and we have to take that in our stride a little bit. But yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, again, it could easily have been Oscar Bob. We were all talking about same price, same situation, 90 minutes again. Did they both get 90 minutes? I think they did, didn't they? So I mean, at least full crew got 90 minutes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, for me with Bob, like he again, an example of my process and my thinking is that he would, if Bob had scored twice and everyone else blanked, and I can tell you this for a fact, like Bob would not be entering my thinking yet. Like that might just be the way I play. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But because of all the pieces that I said, like there's nowhere near enough clues. Like that's just, to me, that's just pet roulette. Like obviously he's an incredible talent and he could be really good, but much younger and much kind of less experienced in a way. And, you know, obviously he's had big injuries and there's players who can play those attacking roles. And so those pieces just wouldn't have come together. And I'd be like, okay, I'd be worried. Don't get me wrong. I'd be worried. Yeah. I'd be even more worried because lots of other people would jump on, but I'd be sitting there a little bit more comfortable. And last thing I want to say, you were saying you were a bit gutted that he scored, and I totally agree. I'm a bit gutted that he's only 5.5. And I said this because if he does, you know, already, I mean, game week 1, obviously, you get the most transfers. You know, he's probably been bought by close to 1 million people. I mean, it's probably
it's like 850,000 so far.
There you go. Yeah, I hadn't even looked, and it's 860,000. Yeah, I mean, so I tweeted about it and said it's kind of a bit of a shame because, again, hyperbole, but if it's what we think it is, which of course it could not be, but we've just got 14 more players to think about. And at 5.5, it just opens up. It's too much. It's like, oh man, they got so much right with the pricing, and it's another Cole Palmer where it's just like, you know, because you can just have, you know, you can just do so much. And when you've started on him, I mean, it's hard to figure out how much of a benefit, because when you've started on him, like for example me, and you've stretched your budget, and you do have those price points that I'm now relying on they need to deliver, i.e. Palmer, Bruno, where I've stretched those points.
Yeah,
Palmer, Bruno, Watkins. That's why I've got a Reindeers, whereas those 1 million people who didn't have a Reindeers probably now got £1 to £3 million in the bank or more. And so it's quite interesting because it means their structure is down the pan if they had one, or their plan of their structure is down the pan if they had one. And they're one transfer down, but they do have a load of money to spend, which is going to be quite interesting. But so anyway, we probably spoke about Reindeers too much, but it is a hot topic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I just flashed up this screen, and for audio, we've got Anton Semenyo, Reindeers, and Sir Christopher on the screen, as well as he's known in these parts, as the kind of hot risers this week. I think they're probably the three of the big targets, etc. this week. I think a fair few people may have been sort of sidestepping on João Pedro to Wood, something like that. But that's the kind of move there. And equally, I won't talk about that too much, but I'll just pass on to some of the fall guys this week for different reasons. Marmouche, obviously, because of not starting and facing competition in that space. Wirtz or Wirtz, we still haven't decided. And lovely Jared. Poor Jared. What can you say? We'll talk about that game a bit later on. But again, it's worth remembering that I think both teams look like they are not likely to score a terribly high amount of goals this season either way. I think it was, what was it, 1.3 XGI between them or something. So nothing too fascinating there. Any notes on those on the players that are being sold? I mean, is there anyone actually that if they were in your team, you would be keen to get them out? I know that generally speaking, it's about the player you're bringing in, but is there a player that you would be particularly worried and wanting to move on? You can see why people are pushing them on, or would you urge patience?
I mean, Marmouche is just a mistake, right? I mean, you just like the player more than you believe there would be rotation, and it's the biggest City squad we've ever seen, and he just is not secure. I mean, you just can't have a player at that price who's not nailed. It's just a mistake, and I think I would just immediately try and correct that mistake. Whereas you look at Bowen and Wirtz, very, very different. You know, I think Bowen, like West Ham were crap. Like that's, there's no two ways about that. They were fucking awful. But Bowen just kind of did the Bowen stuff. Like there was no part of me watching him and being like, Bowen's not going to hit his customary 180, 190 points. Like, if you liked him pre-game week 1, I don't know if that much has changed for me post-game week 1. I just think he got his shots. He beat some guys on some dribbles. He's in the box. We know he's such a good finisher. There's every world where that could have been 2 classic Bowen goals and everyone would be transferring him in instead of out. But Wirtz is like a different one. But I don't know. Danny, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, Wirtz is it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because that's the one where you can totally understand people are getting like a bit twitchy, and it is difficult to sit on that. People got him in big time for that first game mostly because everyone could see that it was Newcastle next and then Arsenal, which is shocking from a fixtures point of view.
Yeah.
Really as bad as it gets. So for everyone going in and being like, right, I'm really front heavy on this front fixture. Like I can see 10 points or more. I want it. And if and then you don't get it, and it is tough. And it's actually the biggest example probably this season or the biggest example of what we've talked about of can you hold firm for most people, I guess, in terms of selling that's owned by a lot of people. Because, and again, I'm not saying you it's absolutely right to hold him or you should, because it can make a lot of sense, especially if it's Reindeers or you see people if we're talking about Semenyo or something, other people are nailed. They've played in the Premier League for longer. They've got better fixtures. They're cheaper, so you can get some money in the bank. It makes sense. And then, but Wirtz is still a great pick. I mean, watching that game was another classic example, kind of reminder where he still played well. He's obviously a great player, and I think he will be a great player, and I hope he will.
Yeah.
That step up to the Premier League is, I don't care what anyone says, it's always a big thing. It's the intensity is so much higher than any other league, and you could almost feel his slight shock, which I think he will adjust to because he's so good, but whereby it was half a second less time on the ball every single time he had the ball. And you could almost feel that he was just a little bit behind the pace. And, the Bournemouth guys are like, we've been in this league, mate, 3 years. We know the pace. We're playing at a whole different pace than you've ever really played against. Doesn't mean he hasn't played against other amazing teams or technically brilliant teams, but it's a completely different pace from a kind of perceptual and cognitive point of view where you're not able to process things at the same pace. And so it's probably a bit of a kick up the arse to him. And I hope he can, I hope he's fine, and I hope he's fine quick, because the next thing he's got to face is the 3-person midfield that would be the midfield that if I was a footballer, I would least want to play against in the whole world.
Sure.
The last thing I would want to see in the whole fucking world, if I'm trying to adjust to the Premier League, is Joe Linton and his friends. Like
in Newcastle.
That's the stuff of nightmares in Newcastle. So that's bad, you know. And then he's got to go from Joe Linton and his friends to Saliba and Gabriel and, you know, Declan Rice and Mikel Arteta's intensity. It is as bad as it gets for those two. And you've got to, if you're keeping, you know, it's because it's such a, because the other thing is he then goes into what is it like Burnley, West Ham or something. So two really good fixtures. So it's a both interesting, tricky one, both from a FPL point of view, a kind of patience, for want of a better word, point of view, from a player point of view, and Liverpool point of view, everything. And then, but at the same time, pulling yourself back to kind of what those truths and facts are when we're thinking about these players and getting rid of them is it's Liverpool's number 10 at the moment. You know, hopefully will stay that way, but it's Liverpool's number 10 who is incredibly attacking and is up front with Salah and co and an amazing team. So it doesn't take much for him to get a contribution. It doesn't take much. So I mean the others I've not really thought about Bowen. I really don't. I'll leave that to Richie. I don't have much to say there, but I think the problem really with Bowen is what we've seen from West Ham in the first game. And and again, it's one game, and you know the weird thing about that West Ham game. Again, Richie can tell us, but it was a weird game because I mean it confirms it in terms of the XG. What they have like 0.7 XG or something, scored 3 goals, but those 2 headers were just like the first 2 goals. I think they were both headers. They were those sort of headers that just so rarely go in, or they just have to be perfect. And it was kind of, it wasn't like they were great chances or anything. And it can kick you in the teeth that, and suddenly you're away, Stadium of Light, and 2 headers go in out of nowhere, and you're lost. Your head's going, and you're thinking, shit, like what, you know, it's difficult. So I personally wouldn't read too much into like that game about West Ham being shit, because I still have faith in the manager. Still have, you know, I think Paqueta was worse than we thought. You know, he didn't have a good game, so that's a problem though for West Ham, because that was like where the creativity might come from. And they've got Chelsea at home next. Rich, I'll let you talk about West Ham because I don't want to.
Yeah, I might just knock over to our generic team slide. It's become a favorite of some of the viewers, just because of the high quality graphics that we operate here.
The wires
managers on the screen. Well, hey, if it's good enough for Pranil and co on the wire, then it's good enough for us, right?
Alon and Ella like used it and was obviously gave us credit and stuff, which is nice. But it was so hilarious because we always talk about how basic this is, and then we just talk about teams and the fact that I love it. Wire. I sent it to Rich. I was like, he's going to love this
because you've got all of these kind of really kind of people producing high quality, fancy graphics now. You know, obviously, kind of Solio and Tom Hadley and all of these others that we'll share a bit later on. And there's me just going, where can I find a slide of all 20 badges? Just stick it on the screen so we can talk around it.
Every week you need to lower the opacity of every like worst team that we're not going to talk about. You know, so like Burnley, like minus 10% on the opacity, and then you know, by the time it's game week 30, there's just like sort of 6 badges and like 7 like ghosts that you can barely see. It's like that's all that matters now.
It's like a photograph in Back to the Future.
Yeah, exactly.
Before what we'll do, we can just start with a quick with West Ham's our kind of first example of just talking around the teams, actually, just a moment. But it did remind me a minute ago, Danny, I've got something in my head where you'll know this from my talk about James Tarkowski last year, that I've got a fascination between the size of players, what they actually are and what you imagine them to be. And Newcastle's midfield, in my head, they're about 7 foot tall. You know, because in my head, there's something about Joe Linton and Tonali and probably even Bruno, even though he's not actually that big. But I just imagine them as vast, sort of Hulk-like giant people that you can't possibly kind of run past. Whereas Mads Hermansen has this sort of tiny little arms based on everything we saw at the weekend. Just a quick shout out as well to the kid on the train on Saturday when I was trying to ignore the scores, who said loudly, "Oh, I can't believe Sunderland are top of the league. Oh, that's crazy, isn't it? I reckon West Ham are going to get relegated." And I was like, "For fuck's sake." Because as you know, I spend all Saturday trying to ignore everything so I can have a nice day, a nice day with my wife and that sort of thing. Think about the football a bit later, a little bit of a break, that sort of thing. No, none of that. Anyway, yeah, just to talk a little bit about them. What it does remind me of is the deficiencies of pre-season analysis, right? I genuinely thought we'd started to turn a bit of a corner. The football quality had turned, had improved. Potter's been doing all of his triangles and all the rest of it. The squad harmony looked quite good. Fulkrug and Paqueta sort of dancing and training, all of that sort of side of things. And it's all sort of gone to nothing very, very quickly. The sort of fan base mood has dropped off of a cliff instantly. And obviously there's been a lot of criticism about the transfer window handling and that sort of thing. But yeah, to talk about them in terms of assets, I think it's fair to say, first of all, that those were two quite bad teams that we're not going to be looking to spend a great deal of time with later in the season. Sunderland, hopefully we can stick with them for a little while, and I think genuinely most people feel pretty good for them, and they did everything right and quite rightly deserved to win that game and that sort of thing. But just from what you've seen in the first half there, West Ham had a great deal of possession but couldn't do anything with it. And actually that's my main concern with West Ham is more, are those two decent forwards? Because Fulkrug is a good player, despite what people think. You don't have to look very far to just remember that he doesn't play like some kind of 6'5" brute that everyone thinks that he might be like. He's a man with a deft touch. He brings people into the game. He's a little bit more sort of Kane-like in that respect, if everything's going well. But it's just him being found that was the issue. Those two up front were a little bit isolated. And for me, the biggest problem in the team, the most concerning, is that central midfield area. And Paquetá just isn't behaving like the kind of player that we thought he was. 3 years ago, I would have told you he could have got in anyone's team. Man City would have looked not out of joint at all. But the truth of it is, it's just not working in that area. And they're not bringing in the players to make that system work. There is a little bit of confusion. There's significant gaps in that kind of wing-back area that teams find it easy to get around. But for me as well, that the really incredibly kind of soft defending of aerial plays. Spencer, who's been on here a few times, I couldn't believe this stat. I think Danny saw it as well. But there were, from 10 aerial duels in the box during that game, Sunderland won 9 of them.
Wow.
And Mayenda, he's not even a tall guy or anything. He's like 5'10" or something. I'm not sure, but it's incredible how easy it was to beat West Ham up in that area. And I think the confusion between the centre backs and the goalkeeper, etc., definitely there to be got at from that point of view. And I know people will want to ask about Chelsea's chances at the weekend in that regard. And you wouldn't expect them to be the kind of team who are going to sling loads of balls in the box and penetrate sort of aerial weaknesses, etc. I think one thing that seems fairly obvious to me is that in the second half of last season, I think West Ham were something like 9th for expected goals conceded in terms of big chances, especially. So the big chances, they're pretty good at fending off. So I think that's something to be interested in. I'm not massively worried about certain elements of the team, but the longer this kind of mood carries on, it is a worry. But they're leaving a lot of business late, and only the transfer window can save them, I think it's fair to say at this point. But yeah, that's probably all I have to say about West Ham for now, unfortunately.
I mean, if Bowen gets 4 shots a game, he's going to score close to 20 goals. I just don't know if I care about the rest, but I agree. Like the creativity is, I think, clearly the problem. The midfield is really bad. I mean, I just seeing JWP's name on a team sheet in 2025, I was just like, are we for real? They really need reinforcements there, and there's
the
kind
thing
of
is, Alon,
no
just very
wingers
quickly
either. Yeah,
I was just going to say there are loads of them. There are loads. If you list off the names in there are tons of the guys.
Yeah.
Whether it be Rodriguez, Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, Souček, and so on. Just none of them are any good, and none of them have any athleticism.
We need Freddie Potts.
Yeah, he should definitely be playing. So yeah, it is a concern. But I mean, nothing has greatly changed. Bowen's still the best asset. I wouldn't be running away from him really quickly, but as and when a time allows, you probably will move off, because I think the fixtures don't get good until something like game week 7 or 8 from memory. So there's still a long way. And unfortunately for me, I've made a bet with Fulkrug, and I'm going to have to lump it out for a couple of weeks. I'm not especially interested in the other 6s. I'm just going to see what I can do with a few more transfers in 2 or 3 weeks' time, I think.
Fair enough, yeah.
Where do you want to go next? I'll throw this out to Danny.
How about Forest?
Unstoppable Forest.
I mean, they were obviously like impressive. I know. Again, I hate having to caveat everything in one game, and it was Brentford and stuff. But I think there was quite a lot to take from Forest for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they'd come out strong, and I thought they'd be strong. Somebody said to me, like, I remember before the deadline, someone was like, "Oh, you're not worried about those comments from what's his name, from Nuno?" And I was like, "No, not at all." And I was, to be honest, I was thinking, if anything, I was thinking, no, I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking that's just, so obviously it's kind of nonsense, and it's a kind of siege mentality stuff. I thought, if anything, we'll see the opposite. But I just thought some things were just really notable in that game. I mean, Gibbs White was incredible, and again, to some extent against the opposition. But what an interesting player he is, and like I keep having to reshape him and grow him, because he's never really been a fantasy option for me. But he's relevant to like how good Forest are. And actually, again, just watching that game, I was thinking, wow. I mean, this guy, so calm and confident. I mean, has he ever looked otherwise? Which is an amazing trait to have, to just always be kind of on it and just always be like in the zone and thinking the right way. And he plays a really sort of unique role in a way, where he's a 10, but he's kind of a sort of robust sort of 10 doesn't necessarily look technically gifted, although he's technically good. He's not a really naturally creative player, but yet he does everything so well in every decision, and always looking for the ball and coming for it and then turning little one touches and passes. And I mean, like, properly oozes class. And so, like, again, that might be obvious, but that's me shifting a little bit of that player in my head, which I think is important to do, and about what that means for the team. And the other one was Anderson, who I thought, I said it to, we talked about it in some group chats, and thought he would move up a bit, as a player this season. I mean, the Forest fans, again, in terms of pre-season, listening to what the fans think about players is useful. I was think about like that Josh King from Fulham and him starting and being great, like that, and they were calling him generational. And then you think, well, if they're calling him generational, so he's the best player ever, like, let's go and watch him. And then you see him. And they were saying about Anderson, and Baker made a really good sort of analogy, as he often does, about players and who they're like, about in terms of who they look like in other players. And he said that Anderson was reminded him a bit of Steven Gerrard. Now I would hold out a second, because I know, because nobody rates Gerrard as highly as, well, apart from Liverpool fans, but I think Gerrard is probably the best midfielder in Premier League history, and just one of the best players ever. But it's actually an interesting point and a really good way to shift, to force the shift upwards about what you're dealing with here in a player, because he isn't just like this grafter. He does have ability and technical ability, and he tries a bit of everything, which he showed on the weekend, where that pass, for example, was such a Gerrard-esque assist, by the way. That was exactly the sort of assist that Gerrard would always play, to like Torres or someone. But he was immense. So I think he showed that he's a really good fantasy pick, and better than I originally thought. I thought he'd be good because we thought about Defcon and we thought about this sort of solid thing, but I think he's got more goal threat than we thought. I mean, he had a few shots, a few chances. He's taking set pieces, but he's another one of these guys who just says, like, I'm going to have an impact on this game today. And that's just such an important fantasy thing. Sorry, Eze just came to my mind then, because then I think about Eze as being like, kind of really not really like that, although I'm maybe being a bit harsh. Let's talk about Eze in a minute when we get to Spurs, because it's never really been. But yeah, Anderson is. So all of this is like how good Forest actually, because we know they kind of overperformed last season in terms of their numbers, and then people are expecting regression. But I actually expect some of that regression to be countered by the fact that I think they're going to be a better team still, because we always just expect this regression to the mean, and we forget that like there's a manager there who's a world-class manager, that they're working on making this team better. It's an operation to get this team better, and you've already got good players there and a really good manager. And what I'm seeing now is they've already got this spine where Sells is a brilliant keeper, Murillo and Milenkovic is a brilliant centre defence partnership. They've got 2 very good fullbacks, and they've just signed another one. And they've got Chris Wood, who is the marksman is the perfect word. He is. I mean, we'll come on to Chris Wood in a minute, because I know Alon talked about him last week. You know, it was kind of funny, and I remember what he said, and I remember and so I want to hear Alon's kind of view on Chris Wood, because he is an enigma, really. He passes us all by, and in this kind of he passes through all our brains in the same way, really, which is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, you know, so all those things, and obviously Ndoye's look really good, and Choi and all that sort of stuff, and Alanga's great, but they seem to have filled that gap. So all these sort of things, and I know it was just Brentford, but it was the individual player performances where I thought, these guys, these are some serious players on this team, and yeah, I expect like bigger things from Anderson and Gibbs White. I don't know what you guys think about that game, or Forest, and Chris Wood, I suppose I didn't mention.
I mean, there's two things that sprung to mind immediately, actually, and one I'll just switch slides to in just a second, because it's a little bit about the CBIT side of things, which I don't want to dwell on for very long, but I just want to kind of raise it in a minute. And what was fascinating, this will seem a bit facetious, it's not meant to be that way, but I remember watching Match of the Day highlights, and I kind of, you know, I must have walked out for a drink or something like this and came back in, and just for a split second, I kind of thought Anderson kind of almost was playing like Bruno Fernandes, as in we expected to. You know, I was thinking to myself, am I getting something from him that it's almost kind of comparable in what we're expecting of them, and the kind of levels that is being reached? I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but just in terms of, you know, taking the sort of bullishness and being the kind of a bit of a leader of the team and making things happen. That's what surprised me about him, was that I'd never seen him as that kind of player before. And it was a bit like what you said about Reinders for you a couple of weeks back, is that something, for whatever reason, something separate has made you go and watch him. And with Anderson, for 2 factors, I think he was playing, wasn't he, in the under-21s this summer as well. There's been a few things that have just made us pay attention and think, oh, actually, this guy is a really decent player. And what's been fascinating this week is people saying things like, oh, okay, Luiz has come in. Is he going to take Anderson's place or his minutes? No chance. He's playing like a guy where no one is going to touch him. Luiz will be lucky to get minutes off of him. He's obviously there for other reasons and a good player in his own right, but I wouldn't be remotely concerned about that. So you can put that out of your mind immediately. The other thing, just very quickly for me, and I'll let Alon come in, is I won't, like I say, dwell on it a lot. I've just brought up for audio a kind of CBIT slide, and I think our expectations in this area versus the kind of reality are going to be that's the other thing that we can't twitch too much on clearly here, because I think it was quite a bit of a damp squib, wasn't it, from the point of view of CBITs? I don't think people really hit the kind of expectations and really kind of suddenly change the whole scope of the game. I don't think that has happened in this week. And obviously, the Murillo being an example, I don't think he got many at all. It wasn't even necessarily even half a dozen. Was it something like 5? Yeah. I might be wrong about that, but it wasn't.
5 or 6,
very many,
I think. Yeah,
at all. And it's clearly going to be so game state dependent, so about kind of tactical nuances and what people are targeting and that sort of thing. So I think that's something we definitely have to give time to, because I didn't see. I think Forest was, for me, the game that I was most interested in seeing how the impact of CBIT was going to play out. That's where I was looking, and I looked at my team afterwards and thought, well, I was sort of joking, but like, where are my 2 points that I've been owed? You know, like that was going to happen. And it did make me think about how over the summer people have gone away and started to calculate when CBITs happen, because it made me really think about, well, have they, for example, collected what someone has got as the total CBITs they would have got across the season, and then divided them by games, and that sort of the method in which they've done it is quite important. Because take someone like Van Dijk. Now he can only get 2 points, as we know, and he can only get them if he hits 10, but he's got 21 there. So in a sense, there are 11 wasted CBITs, right? So my point being is that, in a sense, we can't add up all of his CBITs across a season and divide it by 38, and that's the amount of, then you can work out the amount of points you get. There are going to be a lot of wasted CBITs in some games, and a lot of CBITs that are nowhere near the threshold in others. And how that works out against how many achievements is going to be something that we need to kind of watch, because I think, that's kind of what it made me think about in that particular game. Anyway, any kind of comments either on that or more on Forest, actually, because I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there.
No, I just picking up the tail end of that tangent. I mean, the we call them Defcons, but the CBIT stuff. I mean, I hear you, but at the same time, like the way I think properly to think about that from like a statistical point of view is like, right, the best teams win by a wider margin more often, right? Their average margin of victory will be larger. Their average margin of XG will be larger, right? The best teams. It's the same when you do average of Defcons, right? You wouldn't want to mark Van Dijk as, say, 1 Defcon and throw out the fact that he got 21, because the best CBIT guys will get more often. Do you know what I mean? So, like, you want that weighted in the average. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, there are games where it's like they don't go towards Van Dijk's side at all, and he doesn't end up with, he gets 5 or whatever. But it's a tricky thing, and I frankly, I find it kind of a nightmare to talk about. But on the Forest point, I mean, Elliot Anderson, I am very interested in him. I think that, like, a lot of people, including myself, unfairly think of Forest as just kind of like an old, boring team. And when you actually look at the squad, there's a lot of youth in there, and there's a lot of players that just could get better. I mean, Elliot Anderson's super young. MGW is not even in his prime yet. Hudson Odoi is young. Nico Williams is young. Murillo is really young. He's like 23. And we think of him as this 30-year-old center back leader of the team. It's like he's nowhere near his prime, this guy. And then, so there are reasons to believe that, like, even though they kind of just started with the same 11 that they did every game last season with Ndoye instead of Elanka, it's still like a team that could get better. And the other thing that I don't really know what to do with regarding Forest, specifically Forest, because it was the case so much last season, was last season they just played with the lead at like an unsustainable rate. Like, it's not that just Wood finished all his chances, is that Wood scored the first goal in every game, and they get to play with a 1-0. And that just suits them so much. Like, that's Nuno's dream, is up 1-0. We defend super deep and counter with our fast guys, right? Like, that is the typical Nuno game plan. And, this game, Wood half volley, like 5 minutes into the corner, and like, it's just a feeding frenzy, and I think also, Brentford, this is the worst 11 they'll put out all season by a very wide margin. I think, no Damsgaard, no Ouattara, no Shada, Henderson will probably get some games. That it was a really bad team, but I think just the playing with the lead thing, I don't know what to do with, because if there's a crystal ball that says, yeah, Forest are going to play with the lead in 50% of games, they're going to be as good as last year. They're fighting for top 6 again. But if they're not, I still have a little bit of doubts of them creating chances against settled teams, even though they did it well in this game. I'm just not that sure. Like, even the Ndoye header, like, that was a Sunderland level header. Like, that was insane, that finish. And, if that doesn't go in, they don't really create another chance until the Wood, one-on-one, where he rounds the keeper and, taps it into an open goal, and it's beautiful. But I'm still a little bit worried about the chance creation. But yeah, I agree. Gibbs White is incredible. I mean, he's like the perfect level of good for Forest, because, well, I know Spurs tried to buy him, but in the whole, bigger teams aren't really coming for him, because they want someone better than him, for cheaper maybe, or for more expensive for like a Verts or something like that. But for their level, he's like the best they could possibly get, I feel like, and hang on to at that sort of like tweener, like pressing 8 guy who can be really technical and beautiful on the ball, number 10 guy. It's just, yeah, I mean, he's just a joy to watch. If you like football, it's hard to not like him. But yeah, Elliot Anderson, I think I underrated him, and just like how good of a player he is, and he obviously got 11 Defcon, so like we were one away from him having an 8-pointer instead of a 6-pointer, and maybe that would have affected bonus too. And I think even more people would be sort of like clamoring for him after that.
I think I'll move on to another team now. But again, we probably viewed him the same. But it's kind of what I was saying about Morgan Gibbs-White, though, is that I think I'm having to shift now that I think he's better than even you've just said. I'm not saying he necessarily is, but I think, like, for example, like bigger clubs might have made a mistake there because we all perceive him, as you've just said, as still from last season, as this really good player. I actually think he might be even better than that. I think he might be, again, one of those players that's hard to work out because we don't necessarily see technical beauty, but it's there's something else going on there that I think he might just be like special in terms of what he does in his decision making. But yeah, and
it's tricky with him. It's just, sorry to cut you off, but it's just like because I think in all of our heads he's kind of their number 10. And I think if a team like City or Liverpool or Arsenal are looking for a number 10, they want way more goal production. And I should say like shot production. They want more shots. They want more creating more shots and stuff like that, which is, it sort of feels like you're not getting the most out of him if he's not able to like be robust and be tackling, which makes me think like, well, yeah, he could play the Reindeer's role, right? Like that's kind of the perfect, like where he's not like a lone, he's not David Silva, right? Like we don't need him up there just creating 4 chances a game, whatever, but he can play next to a 6 and do all of the tackling and all of the pressing that they want, while having the technical ability to also move the ball forward and create stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's the role that he really
I don't know. I think he might be better than that, because I mean, even if you think of like someone like Odegaard, I don't see all that much difference in terms of how good they can be as a 10. Like, I know Odegaard's got a bit more skill and technical stuff, but
he's
very, very creative. Gibbs-White. This is what I mean. I think there's more there, but I don't know. But yeah, I'm just going to say, Rich, and you probably want to linking Forest as we're talking to Palace, who they're playing this weekend. Also thinking about Forest and what you said, because I agree completely with what you said, but also, and I think you were saying this anyway, is that let's not forget, like in terms of them that playing in the lead and that early goal and stuff, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, totally.
That's what's we've got to remember about Forest, is that's what they're all set up to do. That is to get that one chance to Wood and to maybe have more volume of chances early on, or make it happen, be aggressive in the first half, in the first 20 minutes, whatever it is, all set up to do that. But yeah, they play Palace this weekend, and I don't know what you think, Rich, but Palace is also like interesting to me, because I also want to ask a question to both of you, because I can't remember now what's going on with the European stuff and like what it means, like who's actually playing in Europe and who's playing
tomorrow.
Who does again?
Palace
is
a game tomorrow,
and then the same time next week, more or less.
Yeah,
and then a Forest in any European competition.
Europa.
Yeah, but the games aren't as soon. Yeah,
so it's
they're not qualifying. No, like qualifying round. So they'll start, when all the European ones. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. I find this game very relevant to us all, because people have got Forest defenders and Palace maybe defenders and attackers and whatnot, but very relevant and difficult to predict, because we know Eze's gone, but the one thing with Palace is, damn, like that system. Again, we talked about like midfielders you don't want to play against when we talk about Newcastle and stuff. If you line up a defence you really, really don't want to play against, Palace is really one of them at the moment, isn't it? I always just think like the 3 centre-back thing, their system they've got. I mean, United play a 3 centre-back system, and let's hope that our 3 defenders can end up somewhere like Palace is in that system. we can only hope. But I just think like when it clicks, that system where those three centre backs all know each other and know what they're all doing and know their jobs, and then they're all really good players within a team, with wing backs that work and everything else. When that system clicks, you're up against Lacroix, Guay, who I think will stay. I don't know unless I've
seems like it to me. Yeah.
I don't unless I've missed him in the last couple of days. Like what we know about him, which is great, is he wants to play, and if he's not getting guaranteed at Liverpool, he wants to stay at Palace for another year because it's a World Cup year. But look at the size of these guys, man. And Richards, Guay, and it's been a nightmare. How are you getting past these three guys? Three absolute monsters who are stepping out. Got Dean Henderson screaming and shouting behind them, brilliant shot stopper, and these three beastly centre backs. It's a nightmare. Every team we see at the moment face Palace, and we've not really had long enough to adjust yet because they started so slow, and it was really like the last sort of 10, 15 games of last season, and obviously the FA Cup. We're seeing a team now that every time they play a top side, I mean, Chelsea are a top side, and there weren't many chances in that game. They beat Man City in the cup final. They beat what was it? The Liverpool in the it's
Community Shield.
Community Shield. I'm not sure what we're seeing from a fantasy perspective in terms of attack, and I think Mateta's great. I still have this inbuilt thing where I can't trust the minutes all that well. I don't know why. The manager, in terms of his distribution of minutes to players, I struggle with, and I struggle a little bit with their attack. Apart from Munoz, by the way, who's amazing. But just thinking about Palace defenders, I don't know what you think, Rich, but they are a nightmare to play against.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things there. I first of all, just for one quick note on your earlier Morgan Quick Gibbs White thing. When you were describing that, I was thinking to myself, if there's one player I can immediately think off the top of my head that would immediately turn West Ham into relegation candidates into they'll be absolutely fine and finish 10th. He would really sort them out immediately. I know it's never going to happen in a million years, but he would completely wreck that situation. It would be absolutely fine if he was there. Anyway, you can dream, right? Palace, yeah. I wanted to talk a bit because I know obviously people want to talk about the Eze impact because there's a lot of talk of verbal agreements in the last couple of days, and when it happens, we don't know, but it seems fairly inevitable at this point. I also wanted to say that because I think people have mistaken a little bit about how much of an impact that's going to have. I'm not going to undersell it because he's a terrific player, obviously, and they will almost definitely not be able to replace him with anyone quite of the same mould and ilk and that sort of thing. But I think people have underestimated how important it is to them to have their first choice central midfield there. Obviously, when Wharton's available, and when they have the ability to kind of use Lerma in the squad, and who's the other guy? I've completely forgotten his name. The central midfielder who's good.
Hughes and Kamada.
Yeah. They do actually look an awful lot better as a team, when they have those guys available. It makes such a difference. And I don't know, I would be more worried about a Wharton long-term injury, for example, than I would an Eze one, something along those lines. He is the guy who makes things happen. And also that they are hotly linked to, I was just looking up a minute ago because I've forgotten his name, but they're linked to Bilal El Khanous, and it's it looks quite likely. And I think that would be a really solid signing for them. He really does move the ball quickly. He's really involved. He's someone who makes things. So in a bad Leicester team, he really did look decent at the end of last season. So I'd urge people to kind of look on him because I think he would replace as best as they possibly can. So I wouldn't be overly worried about that side of them, and that defense is clearly there and it's not going anywhere. I do think that even if Guehi does leave, I think they'll be absolutely fine. It wouldn't put me off bringing in Munoz. He was the first sort of, if we can say planned transfer. He's the guy who I was always making room for. There is a plan to bring him in, and I really don't see that changing. How about you, Alon?
Yeah, Munoz is great. I mean, love to watch him, love to own him in fantasy. What a fun player to own in fantasy. He's just in the final third the entire game. The yellow cards and the bonus and stuff is frustrating, but maybe there's a little hope he can counterbalance that with some Defcons every once in a while, get some Defcon points there. Yeah, I mean, Eze is such a great player, but I weirdly agree with you guys. I mean, I think it hurts Mateta and Sarr more than it hurts the team, if that makes any sense. I mean, he's such a great shooter and producer of other shots for other people, but he's not really their main outlet. That would be Sarr and Munoz or Mateta. And he's not really their main ball progressors either. I mean, that's mostly Wharton and the center back. So I think they'll be able to move the ball and stop the ball roughly as well. I just think maybe getting some shots and maybe creating some of the bigger chances and winning pens and stuff like that is where they'll take a hit if Eze does end up going. But yeah, I mean, it's a great defense. I mean, they are just a really, really solid defense. I remember there were some outlier. Well, they started the season so badly last season, like you mentioned, Danny, but also there was a few weird outlier games. Maybe it was because of the cup or something. I just remember there was a game. I'm pretty sure this is right. They went up 2-0 on Man City, and then they lost 5-2. And then the next game, I think they also lost 4 or 5-0. And it was like Palace have conceded 10 straight unanswered goals, and they're falling apart or whatever. But if you get rid of some of the weird outliers in the weird beginning of the season, they're just a solid defense that doesn't let up more than 2 goals almost ever. You often is a clean sheet, often is just 1 goal allowed, and European games or not, I mean, I think they'll be totally comfortable against Forest, and they don't really have to like overexpose. I mean, it feels like a 0-0 to me, to be honest. I just think both teams are just gonna chill, and there won't be like any great chances either way. But yeah, as a not Wood owner, I'm like kind of banking on that. I'm like, this is a tough game for Wood. I think 3 center backs against 1 striker. Not that many other guys get into the box for Forest regularly, so they'll be really keyed in on him. And I think, yeah, it's a tough game for him. Tough game.
It's one of those odd occasions where I think we could be in for a worth watching 0-0.
Yes, yes.
You know,
yes.
Because they're 2 just good teams that we kind of admire right now, and they're managed well and that sort of thing. And it feels also like one of those games where, regardless of who you have, you probably will end up playing them just because you trust both teams, even though you don't really know the outcome. I'm just going to take a brief kind of pause to highlight, because the Sweeney, which, by the way, I'm guessing didn't make it over the Atlantic, but it's was it a 1970s or 80s TV police drama in the UK? Yeah. Anyway, but he says, so just for the audio, I've been waiting all week for you guys to pod. What a guy. Best FPL content creators, I think it means that, out there. The Intelligent Outlook, 10 out of 10, lads. Now, on that, this is a good time to reach for those buttons, to smash them, to press them gently, however you like. It's all the same to us, to try and fill the coffers and make us feel a bit better about ourselves. So, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Thank you very much. And Alon, we're not going to do like every team on the screen necessarily, because I think some, like Fulham being a good example, I think we can do with the fixtures in a minute.
Yeah.
But is there anyone else you'd like to kind of just highlight and talk about in a bit more depth?
Well, I'll pick a team. I just wanted to also mention, I forgot to say this when I was talking, that if there's ever a Wood injury or a Wood suspension or anything like that, not that I'm praying for injury, not at all. I mean, Gibbs White on pens is broken in the game. Ooh, I mean, he just catapults into like, he's going to outscore Bruno territory, I think, if he's ever given 5 free goals on the season. So just file that away. You know, Wood's old. They play twice a week. If that ever happens, and he's just, I think he should be like a transfer in that week.
He's also ultimate kind of draft pick. He's one of those guys that you can never get around to picking properly, but I always pick him in draft, and he's really... Him and Eze, for example, if you can get him across the sea, and a Wobie, William, those kind of players, you know, you never pick them, but you hopefully can. But yeah, no, that's a good call. Go ahead and do your pick.
Maybe Chelsea. I mean, I know I've gathered that you're a Palmer owner, Danny. I don't know if you are too, Richie. Probably, because he's the most owned player in the game. You know, that the total XG looks good. The total amount of shots looks good. I don't really think, by my eye, there were any really like great chances. Certainly nothing to do with Palmer. All of his shots were kind of from no man's land, and most of them, if not all of them, were blocked. I'm just wondering if you guys are worried, not because Palmer's not great. Like, that's a separate issue. I think we all know he's great. except Walsh, who thinks Oscar Bob is already better than him. But
Yeah,
that's
that was the worst shout I've ever heard.
That's like an all-time like TikTok clip. I just don't want to, light our mentions on fire if I were to do that. But so not concerned about Palmer individually, but if we take Chelsea's season last season and we kind of split it up into two, and one is when they're sort of title contention, even though no one really like believed that to be the case, but the table said they were. I think they're actually top of the table for a little bit, like maybe in December or something like that. And Palmer was the only player in the entire league who was remotely keeping pace with Mo at that point. That was in like sort of the peak Haaland. If you're holding Haaland, you're a nightmare in FPL, and if you've moved on from Haaland, you're doing well. And then there's the second part of the season where people are saying that kind of that's the part of the season where Enzo's tactics were more sort of like, absorbed into the squad, and they were playing more the style that he prefers, which is a lot more controlled and a lot more defensive and a lot less sort of risk taking. And Palmer was not good in that segment of the season for FPL, and I think less good on the the sort of eye test and the underlyings and stuff like that weren't as sparklingly good as we had been seeing for 18 months up to that point. And if you kind of do it that, and I know I'm sort of like slicing the cake the way that I want to, but if you're looking at that second part of the season, and then you look at how they played against Palace, against Palace, it's just sort of, are you a little worried that they are just kind of a one-ish goal team who's, sort of hampered by the tactics of the manager and the obsession with sort of control and keeping people back and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I am worried, absolutely, and I'm not just worried from an FPL point of view. I'm actually worried from a Palmer as a player point of view, and like because I was kind of obsessed over people I think that are like geniuses at what they do, and the kind of sport guys, and I've got a very unhealthy obsession with like Roger Federer and stuff, and then like I want to see players be the best that they can be. I found it really disturbing watching Jack Grealish's last 3 years, just because of like what he could have been. And with Chelsea, I guess I wonder to what extent it's his tactics versus how much like the Premier League and the pressure in this world actually just drives you more towards caution. Some people, it probably is more the tactics and what you said. I think it's both the same thing. I hope it is. I hope it's natural to the manager's game. And I hope it's not that he's just driven towards this kind of caution and this very defensive approach. The sad thing is that because that is what's happened, first of all, broadly, and that has worked in terms of Chelsea have gone up a level as a team in my eyes in terms of how hard they are to beat, how hard they are to play against. I know it was just a bloody useless Club World Championship or whatever, but they were still very good in it. And you could see in the last few months of last season that they'd gone up a level as a team and cohesiveness, and I don't know, and certainly defense, massively defense. And I was saying last week, when you look at them, thinking about teams like that, it is amazing what they've got. Because we were talking about the Colwill being injured and how much of a problem that is. And they've got lots of centre backs. It's actually more about the team and how they defend as a team. And they've got these, obviously Caicedo is unbelievable, and you've got Enzo, and then such clever fullbacks, as we were saying last week, in terms of Kukurea and Reece James. That is immense. I think that's another thing that, by the way, just to go off on a tangent, that's an intangible that we can't quantify, is when you get players who are really clever and you don't see it, but every step on the grass is a better step than someone who isn't as clever would make. And that really counts for a lot, which is one of the reasons why Chelsea is so hard to beat, because the players are so clever. But yeah, like you said, like there's sort of two Chelseas, isn't there? There's the Chelsea where it seems to me that, which I hate, is piecing all these players in certain positions or pushing kind of whatever you call it, like squares into round holes into square plugs, whatever, where because it's like, oh, I don't quite, it all has a sort of trickle down effect. It's like there's certain players, oh, I don't quite trust in centre midfield or right back or full back to kind of do this kind of control. So that means I need Reece James there, who I do really trust to kind of control this middle and invert in a certain way and make these certain decisions, which means there's no gusto, which means there's no width on the right-hand side, which means we don't have Palmer, for example, on this right-hand side with more freedom and all this kind of stuff. So he's pushing everyone around, is what it feels like to me, out of position. And I hate that, because we do end up at the moment with Palmer in slightly different position. It's hard to really understand exactly what sort of effect that has. But, and especially just watching the highlights for one game of the weekend just gone. But you could see him more over to that left-hand side, for example, with a different kind of support and not necessarily that kind of width that helps him.
Yeah.
Zoff always talks about the fact that gusto unlocks Palmer. And they did that very deliberately in the Club World Championship. And it might have even been the final. Was it the final when Palmer scored twice? And that was, you could really see it with gusto, like right out wide, and where Palmer just suddenly had this space. And you give this guy space, and ridiculous things happen. And I hate to be this kind of armchair fan, and because I don't know what I'm talking about in comparison to Maresca, and I hate to say these sort of things, but I can't help but feel that you're always screaming. Because managers do make mistakes as well. We saw players in terms of being played out of position to try and fit like what's optimal. It's like what's optimal for the team or what they think is optimal. England did it for years, playing Paul Scholes on the fucking left wing or, as a number 10, so we could play Lampard together with Gerrard. And, so many games of having to watch Wayne Rooney because he's the most talented player in Premier League, play out of position, because it meant we could fit more pieces in certain places and it'd be more optimal. And Chelsea feel a lot like that at the moment with quite a lot of pieces, so that the team is theoretically optimal, although it's a little bit boring to watch. But I just think, please, when you've got the best player, like this guy, Cole Palmer, is on a different planet to everyone else. And that Oscar Bob thing, we won't bring it up, but I was pulling my hair out of that one.
I know.
I mean, this guy is a different planet. So please let us play him in his best position. Play him in the 10, give him some freedom, build it around him, because he is a difference maker. And I do worry that it's caution holding back Maresca in terms of doing that. It's that fear of this pressure of the, of the job and what can go wrong, and not, it's difficult for all of them to embrace. I mean, even Guardiola's gone through it, that period of obsession with control. And now he's making this, or he has in the past made this conscious choice to go, now I'm going to move more towards scoring more goals than the opposition. That's a really difficult thing to do. And does Maresca have that in him? I don't know. Is that phase coming at any point soon? I really hope so. I tweeted before the season started about thinking that Palmer would be the highest point scorer this season in FPL. Well, obviously, that's immediately looking bad, because I did expect, after seeing the Club World Championship, that he would try and release Palmer. It seemed to me that he was making that next step to say, right, okay, we have organised our defence a bit more. We can do all this a bit better. Now we need to get Palmer to unlock teams. So that's what I thought would happen. And if that does or did happen, then I do think he probably would be the top scorer in the Premier League, because he's actually the best FPL pick you can craft. You can't make a better FPL pick, even with Salah, arguably. I mean, Salah's the best FPL player ever, so it's a bit of a stretch. But obviously, he's a little bit older now, and there's other players around him in terms of share. But Palmer, right in the middle, with everything, the skill he has on set pieces to deliver a set piece, which, for example, Salah doesn't have necessarily. Palmer, I think his direct free kicks are astonishing. He's the best penalty taker in the league, for example, again, considerably better than Salah at taking penalties. So he has things that even Salah doesn't have. Yeah. He should be not only easily one of the best players in the Premier League and top 3 players in the league, and probably still is even when he's out of position, but he should be the best FPL pick in the game. And so that's what, and now I am worried. And now this is the big question this week. And Richie, this is where it also comes to you massively, because they're playing West Ham. How are they going to set up? Because I want to captain Palmer this week, and I think I would in any other circumstances. And I still, probably still will, or I probably will, or I'm leaning that way. But it's tough, because what are Chelsea going to do? And how are West Ham going to set up? What do you reckon, Rich?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that we don't have. Okay, if anyone's looking and wondering whether they're going to pay him special attention and mark him out of the game, etc., we simply don't have that kind of player. So we're just going to get that out there immediately. We're about to sell our our best defensive midfielder, who's extremely talented, captain of Mexico, best player in the CONCACAF Gold Cup or whatever it was in the summer, because we can't find room for him and he won't fit in Potter's system. So slight aside, but we don't have anyone like that. So he will, in theory, get licensed. I think the reality is that the only way we're probably going to be able to stop Chelsea or inhibit is to drop in a little bit deeper and just to close the gaps, etc. I think they'll probably it wouldn't shock me if Fulkrug actually is benched in this game, which I'm now worried about. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they stick a Souček in there and just have an extra man in midfield, someone who can do a bit of box crashing if we have the ability to have the ball. So I think we will be a bit deeper. Chelsea will be restricted to a majority of fair sort of half chances, lower quality chances. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But he still might be the best captain option because it's simply not a great week. You know, it's on Salah at the moment. It's a bit of a spoiler. But I don't have a great deal of confidence in that either. So I think, yeah, he's still a very decent option, but I wouldn't be expecting this to be a mega haul game or anything. I know that people think West Ham are exactly on the floor and we're not in a great spot. But yeah, I don't think that that's the case.
I mean, one thing... Sorry, Rich. Because I'll just bring it to Alon as well, talking about Chelsea and Parma and West Ham and captaincy. I suppose one thing to think about it is Potter, what we saw in the past from Potter as a Premier League manager was that he always played football, didn't he, against the big teams. He wasn't one to setting up in a low block or setting up trying to, I don't know, you know, and every time he came up against Guardiola and stuff, it was, I mean, sometimes they'd outplay them, which was amazing. You know, we saw what Potter could do. But so that's something to think about, I suppose, just kind of obvious. But, you know, in terms of Chelsea and the captaincy is, you know, it's not going to be like a defensive West Ham. They're going to be playing, aren't they? I mean, they've got kind of five at the back. Football, surely. Because
not as much as you would expect in the kind of Brighton days. Just simply because I think at the moment, especially with the kind of spine of the team, the midfield, and to a lesser extent the centre backs, they're just not as comfortable football players at this point in time. So I think that is a little bit. I think. What I will say about Potter's results against big teams, it's worth remembering that he got a 1-0 at Arsenal. And there are a number of other good results against the bigger teams. I think they obviously won at Manchester United.
We remember that 1-0 at Arsenal, don't we?
No.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, when I put the AM chip on Arteta, I thought it was an absolute banker.
And I was thinking Potter.
Oh, really?
I shouted Potter, and I was like, I just got a feeling, and I didn't do it, and I got a 0 on. God, I can't remember. Maybe the Ipswich manager or something. They had like a good fixture. I was like, maybe they'll sneak a win, and they didn't.
But just to kind of finish off on the point, Potter at West Ham has got some reasonable results against the bigger teams. So Liverpool, I think, I'm not saying not necessarily wins, but he has the capacity to restrict the opposition in this area. So I think Liverpool was a relatively tight game at Anfield last time. They did lose eventually, but not many chances. They won at Manchester United. I know people will laugh at that as being a big team, blah, blah, blah at that time, but it was just a reality. They restricted others, you know, Arsenal being a good example to 1-1-0 at Arsenal. So there has been form in the second half of last season for this with Potter. I'm not saying West Ham aren't in a great space, but I don't expect them to be getting absolutely thwacked. I might be back here next week, you know, with and whatever, you know. So I apologize if that's the case. The only thing, as I said, that for me, being expansive, I can't see it quite so much just because they have limited personnel at the moment. They're desperately trying to get midfielders in there. There's a lack of people who are comfortable with the ball at the feet. There's a limited way of hurting the opposition because, you know, all of the wingers are literally injured. So Somerville's still injured. Guilherme injured, collarbone. Bowen obviously being played out of position, and it's not ideal. I still think he's better on the right. So yeah, so I'd be fairly confident of a Chelsea clean sheet. I'm actually more annoyed, if anything, that I prioritized didn't prioritize Cucurella more because he looks to me like the best threat at both ends of the pitch. Weirdly enough, if I can say it like that. So he's someone who, you know, if I had a wild card in hand right now, he would be one of the first names on the sheet because, you know, I'm annoyed about that. But yeah, well, where are we with captains? We can have that conversation now if you like, seeing as we're talking up Palm.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't own Palmer, but I think I would be nowhere near Palmer. I mean, the comment you made, Danny, I think you're actually thinking about what's his name, the Italian guy, De Zerbi, more than you're thinking about Potter. I think those Potter teams were actually like fairly tight, and their whole thing was not scoring a lot of goals. I mean, I think Neil Maupay was their like leading goal scorer a couple of years, which tells you everything you need to know, and sort of just playing that sort of like defensive possession, and they would play like nice stuff, but without taking too many risks. I think De Zerbi was the one who went head to toe, like we're just gonna beat you and be better than you, and they did. They always like gave Liverpool a tough time and City a tough time and whatnot, but.
Like you say, it was possession ball. Like that was their game.
Yeah, totally.
It was still, you know, triangles and shapes and moving up around the ball. It wasn't like sitting deep. It wasn't.
Definitely not that. It's defending with the ball as opposed to like, you know, maybe someone like Nuno or Dyche or Moyes or something. But yeah, I just think that this game actually like weirdly suits West Ham, and I don't even rate West Ham's players really, but I think just in terms of like not taking any risks, not putting too many guys forward, you know, it'll just be kind of Fulkrug and Bowen forward on an island. The wingbacks will run up and down. Paqueta occasionally will get forward, but it'll just be a super defensive game both ways, and you can look at it in two lights. I mean, Palmer will get shots. I have no doubt about that. I don't know if he'll get any good shots, but he'll definitely rip some shots just because that's what you do against sort of like settled defenses and whatever. But in terms of like Chelsea generating a lot of chances and scoring, you know, 2 or 3 or more, I just wouldn't be betting on that in this point. Like again, I'm not just I don't think I'm overreacting from just one game. I think I'm including the last, let's just say 15 or 20 games of last season, and the game against Palace was just throw that in the aggregate of those. And like if you do that, you're just looking at like a mid-table attack where they don't let Palmer do his thing. And that's sad. I agree that is sad. I mean, because he's so fun to watch, and he the most like holy shit moments per 90 are Palmer when he's on it. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually thought that much about who I'm going to cap instead. I mean, I just have it on Mo, and I do think that'll be a crazy game at St. James's Park. I mean, I could see Newcastle winning it. I wouldn't be surprised at all with how ropey, you know, Liverpool's defense looks at the moment. But I still think Liverpool will score multiple goals in probably every game all season. And, you know, like a 3-3, I don't think is out of the question. And if that's the case, I would cap Mo every time. But I have Haaland too, and I'm curious what you guys think about that. But that, like, as opposed to what we were saying with Potter with the defensive possession, I mean, Frank is going to set up a double-decker bus. Paulinho's the most nailed-on yellow card, Defcon, double-digit tackles you've ever seen in your life. This guy, Paulinho, is just going to hurt people. And that's a completely different game. And we haven't seen this new City side play against that type of team with no space. So,
Rich,
if I could just add one more thing on the kind of Palmer's credentials, etc., is that the clear weak spot in, at least from a chance point of view, in West Ham's defence of the weekend was Agurd on the left. So that is somewhere where he's the left centre back. So that kind of space, but a lot of space between him and Juve. So if Palmer is, there will be a lot of chances potentially coming from the right. Or the sort of centre right, so to speak.
He's not going to want to let him go anywhere near Wan-Bissaka anyway, is he? So
no.
maybe
and the other thing is that I mean, if Palmer has been perfecting his free kicks and the goalkeeper has his kind of T-Rex arms, he could be in for a couple of free kick goals. So.
Was bad. He was so bad.
Yeah, I really think Palmer's going to score a few free kicks this season. Mark my words. But You know,
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if it was a low-scoring game with a free kick goal. That actually sounds quite realistic.
1-0 Chelsea sounds like about right to me.
It is so difficult. It's so difficult this week, and there's so many ways to like spin it. And I agree with what you're saying, Alan, and that's why, like I say, because otherwise I would just be nailed on Parma.
Oh, 100%, not even a question. Yeah.
So normally it'd just be nailed on. So the fact that there's doubt is crazy. I mean, again, it is last season that you have to take it from a little bit, but they're also bound to approach Crystal Palace, rightfully so, with a lot of respect, because because these Palace just beat everyone, so they probably were very cautious in that game as well. And we have to remember that yes, okay, that might be how he's going to play from now on, but he also knows he's got to win games. He's got to win games that you have to win. You have to beat West Ham if Chelsea are going to be what they should be, which is a top 4 team. So he's got to win games, and you would hope, and again, you don't bet on hope, that we do see that kind of necessary flexibility in his approach, and that he should be shifting his approach in this game to being like, right, okay, but we can be more attacking in this game, and we can just outscore the opposition, because we have to win this game. A draw isn't good enough, not even close. So that is on his mind. He knows, he knows that they haven't been creating chances, and he knows that they've maybe been cautious, and he knows they're playing West Ham. So it is the classic. It is still the classic of like kind of narratives that aren't necessarily narratives, I know, because they are evidence with what Chelsea have looked like, versus just calibre of player and fixture, because calibre of player and fixture is still all there for Parma, and he's still all got the 90 minutes and all the free kicks and all the penalties and everything like that, which is massive.
Yep.
The thing with Liverpool and Newcastle, which worries me, which always does, is Eddie Howe, and it is Newcastle, because we see it all the time. We saw it again last week against Villa. When he has time, and Baker always talks about it as well, is when he has time to think, is amazing at matchups. And you so often see it in the first game. I look back at the results from last season against Liverpool, and it was 3-3 in the first one, chaos. Salah got 18 points. That was away at Newcastle.
Yeah, there we go.
And then it was 2-0, a sort of different game altogether. And then, of course, you had the cup final where Liverpool got completely outplayed. And you so often seem to see it with Howe, that he when it comes to a single match, he figures teams out and he knows how to play against them. And I do think it could be chaos, because there's a lot to exploit here with Liverpool. I mean, what we saw was pretty mental. Like the whole thing with Carragher. Did you see that, by the way, Alan? With Carragher, no. That was pretty bizarre. I mean, Carragher's been a little bit out. He's annoyed me a few times this week, but he was.
I don't think we got. I think we had like different commentators probably here. Yeah.
Basically, he challenged Klopp. He challenged what's his name?
Slot
a little bit too much, and he was like, mate, like what are the fullbacks doing in that position? When you 2-1 up? And it was like, wow, but it was borderline inappropriate. It wasn't very comfortable to watch. But at the same time, it was like, what are they doing there? And Slot said, well, he kind of said, this is the sort of football we want to play, and we just want to score more goals than them, kind of thing.
Wow.
He's like, fine. I mean, it's not what he said word for word, but he said something along the lines of like, that's the type of game we want to play. When you were pausing it on that screen, it was mental that both of the fullbacks were right up against the byline, and everyone was in full attack. And then so as soon as the Bournemouth players all knew it, and they just, as soon as they got the ball, they looked up, went boof, one knockout, and it was Semenyo again. No, it was 3-on-3 or whatever it was, 2-on-2. So, I mean, I think there's a lot there for Newcastle. I think it looks. I just quite like it for like Gordon and Langer and stuff.
Oh, I love it for Gordon.
What they can expose there, but it fundamentally worries me in terms of Eddie Howe and his matchup. And he knows these guys, and he's thinking about it all week, and every time it terrifies me. Away as well. At the same time, it's Salah, blah blah blah.
That's the thing.
There's both ways to spin it, but when you do raw, when it's not just raw fixtures, West Ham, Newcastle, but also on top of that, the managers and what they do, it does push you. Well, us, you've got Haaland, so it's a bit different. I'll mention in a second, but the players, it does push you a bit back to going right. Let me go back to Chelsea and like figure out what's going on here, because I don't want to bet against Eddie Howe. I just don't like doing it. So it is a tough one there, and as you say, you've got Haaland, who you probably have to captain, but that is a weird game coming into, because you like you say, we know they're all out defense, and it's going to be.
We never like capping against Frank's Brentford, even though even when they were conceding lots of goals, it never felt good. It never felt right.
Exactly. And I was looking back at his results against Guardiola. And they're kind of there is goals though, to be fair, but again they're kind of mixed. There was I think in the last 6 they actually won 2. I think it was 1-2. Certainly won 1. There was a 1-0 win in there, but then the other ones were like 1-1, 2-2, 3-1 loss, 3-1 loss. There's goals there, but anyway, yeah. So that is difficult. But for most of us who don't have Haaland, it's really tough between those two. Rich, did you say where are you with captaincy? You said you're on Salah at the moment.
Yeah, as a default, yeah, sure. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I was hoping this evening's conversation might enlighten me a bit further on it. I think if anything, I don't know, it just reinforces to me that from what I've said to myself anyway, really is that I do think that West Ham game feels like a relatively low-scoring, dour affair, but. You know, we don't have the great options in our squads for game week 2. This is why a lot of people would have started with a Saka because they knew that this situation was going to happen, right?
Yep.
And it was always going to be a case of just who you feel better about between Salah and Palmer going in. And that's kind of the situation we have. Alon, I kind of envy your situation somewhat here because it feels like you do have to. Yeah, you do have to, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I think I've always focused a little bit too much on fixtures. I think that's gotten me into bad places before, like transferring out Mo last year, right? That was entirely fixtures, right? And I mean the difference between someone like Mo and someone like Palmer, you know, I'm not even talking about the players, and we've already discussed the managers, but I mean I say this all the time, and I realize it sounds stupid, but I don't think people actually internalize it. Is the good teams win more often, beat the bad teams more often, score more goals more often, right? And a team like Chelsea, who's a full giant leap behind the front 3, Liverpool, Arsenal, and City in terms of, where they've been and where they're expected to be in terms of team quality and how they play. I just don't have that much confidence that they're going to put a worse team to the sword with the tactics and with just how good they are. Whereas, right, with the slot thing, I mean, I'm more on the Carragher side of like, what is the plan here? I don't really understand what the plan is for the fullbacks. Why is Endo crashing the box right now? I don't really know what the hell's going on with Liverpool, but I know exactly how they're going to play. And I just don't really foresee a world where we're not scoring 2 goals, minimum. I mean, I think there was like maybe, not including after winning the title, because they kind of just were on the piss and not caring about the games. But I think there was like 2 games all season last season where they scored less than 2 goals, something insane like that. And I'm looking right now. Yeah. So there were 2 games. There was home Nottingham Forest in game week 4 when it was like, holy shit, Nottingham Forest are good. And then there was away Nottingham Forest in game week 21. Oh, sorry, I missed one. And there was an away Palace. But every other game, they scored, I think, 2 or more, which is insane. I mean, that's like insane consistency. And that just seems like they've bolstered the attack. They're sacrificing a lot of the defensive structure, which, again, I don't really think is a great idea. But he knows a lot more about football than I'll ever know. And I'm just like, I just know how they're going to play, and I know they're going to score goals. And I know Mo is every season the best player in the history of FPL at the beginning of the season. So,
that was with the Klopp team, really, wasn't it, as well? Don't forget.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing, wasn't it? It wasn't really. Now he's got his own team, but it's definitely changes going on there in terms of approach.
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, just that goal scoring record wasn't fluky. The numbers supported that, the XG supported that, the chances they were getting supported that, and again, like half. Like if you sort it by goals scored, I mean, almost all of them are like game week 30 or later because, the title was just done and they were exhausted and, all that stuff and on the piss. But, yeah, I'm leaning Mo. I'm definitely leaning Mo, but I haven't given it that much thought between Mo and Haaland, I think. But like, sorry, I'm just ranting right now. But like, if you own Saka or Gyökeres or something like that, and the way Leeds played, and the way Arsenal played, we didn't talk about that game at all. Like, I don't know if I even feel better about those guys.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here being like, oh, yeah, Arsenal's going to crush Leeds 4-0. Like, I don't really know. They'll probably win somehow. They'll probably score a goal off a corner and get one other big chance or something. But it doesn't feel like, I don't know. It just, maybe I'm just overreacting to game week 1, but it doesn't feel to me like Arsenal's just going to absolutely destroy them and create 7 good chances and score 4 goals, and Saka has a triple return in him. That's not how it feels to me right now.
I mean, strangely enough, it feels like a similar way that how we've described that Chelsea-West Ham game, but just with a little bit more confidence in the team.
Yeah, a little more, a wider gap between the quality also, right? Like Leeds, promoted side, Arsenal, title contender, yeah.
There's a weird, not weird, but there's a kind of a transition going on at Arsenal as well, though, isn't there, in terms of like what they're doing now with Gyökeres? I mean, did you see the Havertz is injured now as well for a bit?
Well, I wanted to bring that up with you guys later because I wanted what you think about Gyökeres now as an FPL pick, because if his expected minutes or whatever people like calling it just changes from 60 to 90, I mean that's very, very significant. And there's also some report, but I have no idea if this is bullshit at all, that he's on pens.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he might have like literally overnight gone from a guy where I'm like, he's far from a pick to being like, kind of wish I had him this week, like immediately.
I think the fixtures do you a favor, don't they, for a little while? I don't know whether I've got them on my on hit. Well, we could take that actually. Team goal projections for the next 6 weeks. I mean, Arsenal obviously do well this week, but then it's not until game week 7 before they go over 2 again. From the Solio data, so maybe that gives you a little bit of a breathing room.
Yeah,
and you've got Haaland. You can't be greedy.
Yeah, well, I've also got Jimenez, and I'm like, I could do something.
They've got, after Leeds, they've got Liverpool. I mean, it's as bad as you can get really for an attacker. They've got Liverpool away, then Forest, then City, then Newcastle away.
Yeah, it's bad.
But yeah, I mean, he still has to do something, Gyökeres. I know, and there has been that talk. And I always remember it was like Ted Knutson, maybe, or was it someone else? Or maybe it was him and I think it was him and on above average, the other dude.
He went on above average, yeah.
The other dude as well, John McKenzie. They both kind of said that like it was weird because he's everything that they don't need in a striker. Like all his strengths are what Arsenal don't necessarily need in terms of like what he's good at and bullying defenders and running through. And I can't remember the details, but I remember them basically saying it was incongruous, really.
They need Haaland.
Well, yeah, and so. And it did look. I mean, United were a better team against Arsenal, which we do need to talk about United briefly in a second. I have to talk. It's the one good time we can feel good about United right now. But they didn't look great going forward, and they did look a little bit like oh, we've got this new guy here, this new man. We don't really know what he does or where he wants us to put the ball or how we want to play with him. It did look a little bit like that, and it's sort of Saka was like doing everything on his own and having to do a lot of defending, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's still a great fixture for Leeds, but I'm not worried about Gyökeres. I mean, if he does it, he does it. He is one of them where I'd need to see it first because he hasn't done anything yet. That's the bottom line. And maybe we do see a bit of a weird transition with Arsenal, and they keep seeming to do this Arsenal where they sort of it's almost like they're not paying enough attention to the transfer market in a way. Like that's what it looks like from the outside, where they're like it seems like too secondary to them because they always seem like one step behind everyone else, and then they always end up with someone that's kind of cost a lot of money and appeases fans in some way or appeases the manager in some way, and yet doesn't seem to fit. It's not
right.
There's something wrong there. It's not like Brentford or someone like that that's like an incredibly well-run club where everything is just exactly what they need, which has unbelievable ramifications and benefits. Arsenal seem to just be like, they're in the wrong body, they're in the wrong skin again. It's just like nothing. It doesn't feel quite right there. I don't know why. And maybe that's nothing. But I mean, they obviously have made some good signings as well, like Declan Rice and whatnot. But yeah, so I just need to see it there with them first. I just want to say, by the way, as well, before I forget, because I'm getting news coming through here that I'm just going to have to catch up on this group chat. First of all, it said, because thinking about Arsenal and Eze. First of all, it said Tottenham are considering swapping Richarlison to get Eze, which is interesting.
Oh.
Then Arsenal make a move as a 27-year-old wants them. Blah blah blah. It sounds like, and then Arsenal have said they're convinced that Eze prefers to join them over Spurs.
Wow.
60 million package offered to Palace with easier add-ons, faster payment, blah blah blah. So it sounds like Eze is going to Arsenal now. I'll have to catch up on this. Which, again, weirdly for me personally, changes absolutely nothing about how I think about Arsenal. Like, I think Eze is a great footballer, but there's something I'm not quite seeing there with him that I need to see more of at a top club. Like, he is a bit of he's such a unique footballer that I don't always know how he fits in. And actually, he was just starting to fit in perfectly in that very unique system that Palace have got, where, like you said, like, he really is a big link between that midfield and like Wharton and the strikers and Mateta and stuff, and Sarr who's running through. What does he look like at Arsenal? If he is at Arsenal, I don't really know. But if Martinelli or the players who've gone for in the past have always been these kind of wingers who push and stretch and run with the ball and whatnot. And Eze doesn't do any of that.
It's confusing. He's kind of a.
How does that fit in?
He could play wing. He could back up Odegaard. He could, back up Saka. Like, he's very versatile, and I understand, like, it's obviously getting good players is good for any team, but I kind of hear you. It's not like you don't get him and immediately be like, oh my God, add Eze to my team, or like, oh my God, like Gyökeres's goals went up by 3. It's just like, yeah, he's good. He's depth is good, and I wish he was on, my team, but yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Let's talk briefly about Man United, because we're talking about captaincy as well, and like Fernandes. So I know we've still got to get through teams, so we'll be quick. But I do want to talk briefly about United. I want to hear what. Well, I heard a bit of what you thought already, Alan, a little bit anyway on like your pod. But because it's funny to me because obviously you're a Liverpool fan, and it does seem, which is amazing to me, that this kind of insane, almost irrational hatred and almost bias towards United still manages to stretch over to the United States, and I'm like. It's fine and it's good, but obviously, like, you're generally always pretty negative on United, which is fine. But it was obviously a good game for us. I mean, it was the best we've looked for a long time, which was
best Amram game for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, what are you guys thinking about? Not just United, but Cunha, Bumo, and Fernandes.
I mean, actually, if anything, watching the game gave me a little bit of an uptick on several of the United assets. I thought, Cunha looked absolutely magnificent in the patches that I caught. I'm not going to pretend I watched the whole game, but the man just looked like for brief moments of that game, and that will only increase throughout the season. He looked like he owned the pitch to me. But perhaps I didn't see enough of the game, but it looked to me like he is, maybe 6, maybe 10 weeks time at some point in the season, he's going to look like he's just majestic and the guy is just going to be running the games. And it might make me think, well, maybe this is my guy instead of Bruno. I don't know. Maybe there's room for both. Who knows? It would be quite difficult to do. That's going to mean sacrifices elsewhere. And as for Bumo, he's getting more chances than I thought he was going to get. I suppose that's probably the thing that I'm interested in. And obviously people have already spoken about Dorgu as well, but clearly someone who we're going to look at later on down the line. But only good things, really. I have to say I came out of it much more interested in Manchester United than I was before.
Yeah, I think that a lot of what I say is usually negative about United. I think that, like, this summer it was one of those weird transfer windows where everything I was saying was negative, but not for this season and not for FPL. And I was kind of like not making that clear, I think, because I was speaking in our Discord with some people too about this, and we kind of ended up agreeing, but we came from different angles, where I was saying, like, I actually don't like the business of Cunha and Bumo at all for a team as far from the top as Manchester United are, because by the time they refresh the talent, those guys are going to be 30. But for this season, it obviously makes them way better. They just come in and they're just immediately like bossing the game and looking so good. So it's great for that, and it's great for watching. It's great for FPL. But I don't know. Walsh and I kind of disagreed on this, but I had the feeling that there was just a striker-shaped hole missing. And, maybe Šeško can come through and be great and fill that hole, and maybe someone else will fill that hole. But that whole time I was just thinking, okay, Bumo's playing really well. Cunha's playing really well. Bruno's playing really well. I just need someone in the middle of the box to be on the end of this stuff. Like, that's all I was thinking that whole game. And again, I mean, it's probably their third hardest game of the season against Arsenal, or, whatever. One of their 6 hardest game of the season. Home away against the top 3. And so, take that all with a grain of salt, because they were good and they got a lot of shots, and none of them were really good, but none of them were like high quality shots. But Arsenal's the best defense in Europe. So, I'm not going to be like, nitpicky there. If they can generate that many shots and that many like touches in the box and stuff like that against less good and less organized defenses than Arsenal, then some of them will end up being good chances, I think. But yeah, there was just a lot of moments where it was like Cunha spins someone. There's one other player, maybe it's Bumo, maybe it's someone else in the final third, maybe it's Dallo or something out wide, and his options are shoot from 25 yards, try and beat 3 guys on the dribble, or make a side pass to Dallo, who's just going to cross into, a set defense. And I was just like, there just needs to be one more runner or one more guy sort of like cheating alongside Bumo. But I think the signs are very promising for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone can disagree with any of that. And
yeah,
there were so many pieces missing that there's bound to be like still pieces missing. And it's so visible, isn't it? Exactly what you're saying. Hey, there we go.
There's a lot of them out there.
What are you, Kingston on Thames or something?
No, that's far too rough and ready. A bit north of that, I'm afraid.
No, like, I just think, not even as a fan, like objectively, it's just fascinating on so many levels in terms of an example of a few things. First of all, like how, because some people say, oh, did we need kind of 10s or that position as much as we need others? And I was like, well, yeah, we needed all of them, but also you need every position for certain systems to work, or all systems to work, really. You need it all. You do need both of those 10s, of which we had none. Yeah, we can play Fernandes there, that's fine. So it's not like it was like, yeah, okay, we kind of had Bruno who kind of can play there. I get that. But what an amazing example of what a difference players actually can make, because that's how bad we were. And I just think that's kind of fascinating, because people often say, oh, players are not as big a difference as you think. It's more about the manager and the system, which is...
Oh, God, that's so wrong.
Well, exactly. I mean, sometimes it can be true. If you, for example, if you take, like we talked about with Palace, if you take Eze out, yeah, okay, it's definitely a blow, but we still expect Palace to be very good, you know what I mean, and robust and stuff. Blah, blah, blah. So I understand it from certain perspectives, but I think this was a really good example of like, wow, like the level of levels of not just of players and how a system can work, but of levels of players, don't you think? Where like, I mean, Cunha, like you said, I mean, it's similar with Bumo, but it was so fascinating to me to watch a guy who not only lifted our entire, like both of them did in a few, lifted us to like from absolutely shit to like a good team. And obviously that's massively down to the manager as well. But Cunha, like you said, Rich, he owned that pitch. Like he was actually looking down on the Arsenal defence. To see a man look down on the Arsenal defence, because he was basically walking around as if to say, fuck's sake, if there was 4 of me, we'd be 4-0 up now.
Yeah.
He knows he's the best player on the pitch, which is mad when you actually see that against a team like Arsenal. Like you said, they're the best defence in Europe. And so that's an amazing example to me of caliber, of like when you get these levels of good, of great, of really great, of world class. And Cunha is just an absurd player. And, it has been for so long. Especially, I mean, there's a few of them, now, but he is ridiculous. And so to watch what impact that had as a player, that he can make those runs from the midfield and not have the ball taken off him, barge through that kind of defense. I just thought it was amazing. So even genuinely, that is not, as a United fan, I just think it was kind of fascinating to see what impact that can have. But yeah, just very quickly, like you said, Rich, that does get really interesting in terms of the Bruno thing and how that pans out, because it's a big bet to make, isn't it? When you're betting on a guy who, although you save $1 million, you're betting on someone who doesn't have any of the set pieces and the penalties. And actually, though, he's so good and so ridiculous. And as we've seen before with like his ability to get bonus for the reasons that we can see. I mean, he gets fouled all the time. He dribbles past people all the time. He makes recoveries. You can sort of see why he accrued so much bonus with Wolves. And he got all those points at Wolves without penalties. Or I don't think he took one, did he? I don't think he took one last season, even though he's probably on them.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he didn't need them at Wolves, in other words. So what I'm saying is that could get really interesting because he could actually be the pick at United or Bruno.
I still think Bruno's being like overlooked a little bit, as he always is, right? I mean, he still created most of the chances, was the best on the team in the bonus. I think he was 1 Defcon off of hitting Defcons.
Yeah, he was.
It's insane. Like, if he hit that threshold, would we be having the same conversation, or would it just be like, man, Bruno's just going to rack up these 4-pointers plus pens? I just think, I still think $1 million is worth it to go to Bruno, but I hear your point, and similar to the Gibbs White conversation, if there's ever any Bruno violent conduct or Bruno injury or something like that, and all of a sudden it's maybe Cunha's on pens or maybe Bumo's on pens, it's like, holy shit, like get him immediately.
Just last one very quick thing I did want to say just then is, they've only, you said about their age, and I know what you're saying about the talent turnaround, but it won't surprise me if United are quicker than you think, but both those guys have just turned 26. I mean,
okay, I thought they were a year older.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good age, I think. I mean, you do need a mix of ages, but they're both approaching prime.
Yeah.
So
it's just it's not that specifically. It's more for me. It's just a confusing squad, and obviously that's because for so long it was so poorly run, right?
Exactly.
But like Bruno is obviously post prime, then those guys are sort of in their prime, and then the other big purchase is Sesko, who's way pre prime, like he's just raw, like not ready to start, like barely had any production in the Bundesliga, so it just doesn't all line up. But I get it. I mean, it makes the team better immediately, makes them relevant immediately. Maybe they'll get a Europa League spot or something, and and then it'll kick on from there.
Nice.
Be interesting to see. Be interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to whip through a couple of slides and then drop to our teams. I know we haven't talked about all of the teams here, but I think 1 or 2 issues, such as do you play Burnley defenders, blah blah blah, will come up in our teams, etc. Quick shout out, because I think we may have overlooked Prenil in the chat last week. So a lovely comment. 3 beautiful men from the wire. I mean, if you don't really listen to us, listen to them, and they think we're beautiful. So that's well worth pointing that. Of course, quite right too. So what we'll do, we'll go to the teams in just a second. There's a few. I did have other things to show, but what I'll do is I will just quickly leave them there so that other people can, if they want to sort of pause the screen later. You've got the clean sheet projections, goal involvements, a few other really good things from 11FI, and remind me, it was Schadenfreude.
Schaden now. It's FPL Schaden. He was Schadenfreudist on Twitter, who's he'll probably do these. I mean, he's a great account, by the way, and he'll probably do these every week. Because I know we've, obviously, as usual, rambled on for too long to talk about these like in detail. But we might refer to them when we quickly go through our teams. But he'll probably do these every week because it's really interesting. It's just like how the markets have changed in terms of projected goals and assists, like after like kind of a roll, I guess a rolling thing. I've not looked at it in detail, but it was pretty.
Yeah, I mean, as Stanley says, I mean, Reinders is a really good example of this, or Matt O'Reilly, that on the 5th of August, they didn't even have odds or trends, etc., for O'Reilly, and now he's already had an uptick from 5 to almost 8 goals over a course of a season, and Reinders has gone from a little under 5 to a little under 9. So it goes to show how quickly these things are sort of catching up, and I'm sure that will play into Solio projections and stuff like that later on as well. So I'll take that off for now and just go into a different feature. Yeah. I'll find our teams. I do have our teams from last week, but we won't talk through them really particularly. We'll just, seeing as I've got them here, I'll just bring them up. So Alon, remind me, what did you score last week, Alon? I can't actually remember. You were probably the top scorer here. 63, as you can see. So for those interested, I won't read it out because it will come up in the preview selection in a minute. But Michael Keane, I'm not even quite sure what to say there, but you can explain that away in a few minutes' time. Alderete it looks like quite a good pick, actually, strangely enough. So we'll come to him in a minute. Danny's team from last week. I can't remember what you scored,
53,
Danny.
53, I think.
So you've got the least points here, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So in the mini league, you'll be. Yeah.
Maybe you actually want to show rank this season now.
Yeah. Well, as long as one of us does well, and I did less well than Alon, but somewhere in the middle. So my lot, I think the only difference was Bob Sanchez, really, and that's going to bite me in the arse anyway because of Paul Krug. Whereas you've got Strand Larsen, and I thought he looked really good, but we'll come to him in just a second. What I'll do, this is going to take me a moment. So, Danny, actually, we'll start with Alon and your team for this week. Alon, it will come on the screen in a second.
No problem.
But if you want to start telling us your thoughts going into this week, and I will bring your team up in due course. So any moves?
Well, I'm considering Jimenez to Thiago. We talked about that a little bit before. It does feel like an overreaction to me in the sense that would I be thinking about that if Thiago didn't get a penalty? I'm not sure. I probably wouldn't. But part of that is also new knowledge. We weren't 100% certain that Thiago was on pens, before game week 1, and now we are. And also with Muniz scoring, the equalizer, I'm just like, oh God, I'm already thinking like, is Jimenez even nailed to start? Which I think he is. To be fair, I think he is the starter there.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, Alon, but just while we're on that, is Jimenez 6 or 6.5?
6.5. So I would bank 0.5 there also, which doesn't feel insignificant at the beginning of the season.
What about Strand Larsen?
Yeah, I mean, I like him too. Yeah, I mean, at the same time, there is something in the back of my head that's saying like, calm down. Like Fulham played fine and Jimenez was fine. And like I liked him a lot more than these guys in preseason. That's why I picked him. But I'm not sure yet. I haven't like figured out a good, go back to the beginning of the podcast if you want to hear us talk about process. But I haven't figured out a good, sort of should I make this move or not process for myself yet. So I will do more thinking about that in the future. There's also the bench boost thought. Obviously, I can't do it without making a move because I have a 4-5 non-playing forward. But my bench is Dubravka home Sunderland, Keane home Brighton, Alderete at Burnley. I'm just like, man, is it going to get any better than that any other week? Maybe, but there's not really, unless I missed one, I don't think there is a playing forward at 4-5 in the game. So no, probably can't do that. In the end, I'll probably just hold. I mean, there is a little bit of a benching headache with defenders. I'm not the type to entertain ever benching Porro, even at Man City. It's just not for me to ever bench him with the set pieces and the attacking. So it's choosing 2 from 3 out of Senesi home Wolves, De Kuiper at Everton, and Keane home Brighton. I have Keane.
Sorry, go ahead. We do a quick audio because just before you talk through that for who you've got in the team, because we get a lot on the.
Oh yeah, sure. So I have Petrovic in goal, home Wolves. Right now I have Senesi, Porro, and De Kuiper as the starting defenders, but Keane, home Brighton is first on my bench, lurking, might get in there. I have Mo and Wirtz, I have Reinders, I have Bruno, and I have Jorginho Ruder, and then my 2 forwards are Haaland and Jimenez. So yeah, I mean, just that one benching decision with Keane. I mean, the reason I went for Keane at all is just Branthwaite has another muscle injury, and the greatest predictor for muscle injuries is muscle injuries. He just, it sounds stupid, but it's true. I mean, his hamstrings and groin just are problems, and he might be out for a while. And, Tarko got the Defcons and Keane didn't in the first game of the season. But the way Everton play, I just think there's a lot of CBITs or Defcons on the table. And Keane's fine. He's I don't really rate him, but he's fine for Moyes. I thought he played okay. He has goal threat. He's 4-5. If any Everton defender was 4-5, he would be like 60% owned in the game, and I just feel like I got a little cheat code for a couple months. But yeah, choosing which one to start there, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. Senesi was horrendously bad versus Liverpool, which I think I need to just ignore and just say, he's shaking the rest off and he'll be fine. But that is playing in my head a little bit.
How did he do for Defcon, Keane, in the last game?
I think he got like 8, something like that. He was neck and neck with Tarko for a while.
7.
Oh, 7, yeah. They were neck and neck for a while. I think at halftime it was like 6 for Tarko, 5 for Keane or something, and then they were both on 7. And then at the end of the game, Tarko just got every single one. Every single cross, he had it out, every single corner, whatever. Yeah. And then he conceded the penalty because he's an asshole and wiped the clean sheet for Keane. So, it was annoying all over.
I do just want to bring up very quickly, like the Defcon, like I am really worried that we're not going to be able to trust it. I don't know. Maybe
I agree.
Maybe it's a stupid thing to say, and maybe like there are statisticians out there going, "No, shut up! Like we don't miss a thing." But I was watching a Monday night Rodon. I had a tweet about like, what the hell? What have they done to us?
Yeah.
I'm watching Monday night counting Joe Rodon's clearances. This is what I've become. But I mean, I blatantly, because I'm following it and I wanted to know if he could trust it. And I could see he was on 7. I mean, he wouldn't have got the points anyway, but he was on 7 for ages from like the 65th minute.
Yeah.
And in like the 90th minute, right, he made a blatant clearance, which I'm talking, it was like in his own penalty area. The ball fell to him. He booted it clear, kicked it out the stadium, and then got fouled. So he won a foul, which I think did register.
Yeah.
Which came after the clearance. So that's the first clearance. So that surely has to count as a clearance because that's why it was a foul, because he kicked it away. And then like a minute later, he did another clearance in the middle of the pitch, which was just a blatant, like the ball was bouncing around and with the opposition, they're 1-0 up, and he just, he cleared it away. And neither of them appeared on the thing. And I'm like, is this because I don't care as much about the points as I do about the integrity of the game and like fairness. Like again, I'm a little bit on the spectrum with this stuff. Like I don't cope well with things that aren't how they should be. Like I just stopped. I just never watched Formula One ever again after that thing that happened with Hamilton. And it's not, I don't like Hamilton. I just couldn't cope with the fact that they just changed the rules and wrecked the game forever. As far as I'm concerned, just couldn't deal with it. And I really struggle with that all the time in FPL. With like, people think when I kick off about assists and stuff, I'm genuinely not actually as bothered about the points. I can't. It has to be right because I'm thinking, well, what if I was going to win the game? And like, I didn't win the game because like Barry in the office was like talking to his mate when that clearance happened, and it cost me, 2 points, and I can't deal with it.
I'm with you, and I blame Opta, which is obviously where they get the stats from. The vagueness in the definitions of these events is just ridiculous. Clearance is a defensive action where a player attempts, by the way, doesn't connect with the ball, attempts to get the ball away from a dangerous zone on the pitch with no immediate target regarding a recipient for that ball. What the fuck does that mean? Who decides if it's a dangerous zone or not? Like you said, it's Barry eating a sandwich. He has a fucking bacon buddy, and he's like, that's pretty dangerous. Yeah, I'll give him a tick, right? And then the interception is a player reads an opponent's pass and intercepts the ball by moving into the line of the intended pass. It says nothing about, does he control the ball? Does he receive the ball and make a pass? What if the ball goes out of bounds off him? Is that an interception? No definition at all. So they're just like, yeah, that's an interception. That one's not an interception. Like, it's ridiculous, dude. It's
a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
There's a couple of things I wanted to say here, and actually, I don't know whether I have to watch what I say a little bit because my memory of this might be a bit vague. But so obviously, I live kind of west of London, just a little out of London, and Stockley Park isn't that far away, right? The place where they do all the they have all these TV screens everywhere. They're sitting around, adding it all up. They're working with Opta, and of course they're working in tandem with the fantasy games as well, right? So they're working out what a couple of years ago, for example, it was someone's job to scrutinize something and work out whether it counted as an assist, and they had to be aware and present in that moment in time.
And the March goal, right?
As to whether it was going to be counted, at least initially, as an assist. And actually, I know Fantasy Football Scout for a while would, have managers, so people with an experience of fantasy games, and they would have them there on a Saturday or a Sunday doing kind of like shifts and being the guy who was helping and advising that kind of stuff. And I wonder whether that happens now. Does it still happen now, where there's a guy with the fantasy games there, obviously looking and inspecting and trying to work out whether it's a CBIT and that sort of thing? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to find out how that process worked.
Yeah.
And the second comment I had was actually, it made me think about your comment, Danny, about whether they pick up on certain things as being a clearance or a tackle and that sort of thing. And the advantage that, okay, I'm going to try and give an analogy here. Where if you went to watch a play and you went to watch a Shakespeare play, how that they're acting? It's like they're they overact, and that sort of thing, or they're used to, and they say the words in a very clipped manner, and you can follow it and that sort of thing, their actions and so on and so forth. Whereas there are others that might go under the radar if they're doing a more sort of realistic sort of soap opera type acting, and it might, maybe you see it a different way and that sort of thing. James Tarkowski, when he makes a clearance, it's obvious that it's a clear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he is the most kind of head on the ball, hoof, that sort of thing. Whereas a Joe Rodon, I didn't watch that much of him, but I can imagine he might make a little clearance and you might not even notice. It sort of trickles away.
I had to. Do you know what? It's such a good point, because, and I know they know who, because he does blend in a bit with his body size. I had to look in the game. I had to check what shirt number he is, which I'm pretty sure was number 6, and that was the only reason that was the only way I could be sure which one was him on the pitch, because it was when he turned around, I was like, I think that's Rodon. I mean, it definitely was him who made the clearances, by the way, because they actually said his name as well, and I was watching at that point. But I was looking at the back of his shirt, because you're right.
It's not easy, especially a crowded box, a corner, or whatever. Maybe I wouldn't be that shocked if they're like, it's probably Tarko. The guy who like fell down and jumped the highest. Yeah,
they probably gave Rodon's clearances to Tarko, because we're not sure. If you're not sure, just give it to Tarko.
Just give it a Tarko. Yeah.
Big Verge.
I've switched to Danny's team. I don't know if you want to talk through your situation there, Danny.
Yeah. I'll try and be real quick so we can not beat our record, and we can, because I don't want Alon to never come back again.
Yeah, I'm always with you, Alon. Sorry.
I know.
It was determined it was going to be less than 2 hours this time. So next time, at least it's better than last time. So I'll be really quick.
Yeah.
My biggest question. So I've got a bit of a weakness goalkeeper wise. So I will be playing double Burnley defense. Not too fussed, to be honest. It's not like it's a good fixture. I've said before, it's just they're back home with each other. They're in the Championship again. They're where they want to be. Burnley, they need to get a result. They're at home. It's not like I expect a clean sheet, but I think it's a good fixture for a clean sheet. And Keller has away against Villa anyway, which is no good. And so my biggest question really is just Porro versus Anderson. I've been switching, and I know that I know that Anderson is optimal. I know that the models will have him quite significantly ahead. It is an interesting one, though, and I don't want any bias to creep in terms of being a United fan. I do think United will score, but then I've thought that for the last 3 years in lots of different games, and then just been completely punished, and it's been completely shit.
Yeah.
But we do have Cunha and Bruno and Fernandes and even Sesko, which is pretty bonkers. But Fulham are a really good team, so it is a little bit worrying. And that's why I have Anderson, because he's like a bit of a CBIT monster. But Porro is the more interesting pick to play this week, because, of course, we do expect them to be wing-backs. We do expect Spurs to be all-out defence, but with Porro not only reasonably far forward, but you expect that the only real way that Spurs can score is with set pieces, a bit like they did against PSG. Yeah. And he will be on the set pieces, I think, if not all of them. I hope I'm not wrong there, but I'm pretty sure he will be. But they were really good in that game, and they're going to be really good. And we know that Frank is a really good set piece coach, and we know that Van der Ven's a big beast, and we know that Romero's a run bastard who gets his head stuck in, and it kind of fits together for being a good set piece team. And we know that City have historically not been very good at dealing with that sort of thing. So it's a more interesting pick, isn't it? It's obviously making a bet towards those getting some kind of attacking return, and also you might well get the Defcons.
Yeah,
who knows? Because he's typically been quite good with them. So Porro's a more interesting pick. But that's the only real decision. Other than that, and obviously the captaincy. So I need to think hard about captaincy. I'm not sure where I'm going to be. I mean, Watkins should probably be in the conversation. I mean, but he's not really for me, because I never really captain strikers. So I always have an issue with it. But he certainly looks pretty good for it. But yeah, the rest of it is what it is. It's just rolling a transfer, my favourite thing to do.
Cool. Just very quickly, because I'll bring up my lot there as well. I think on Porro, obviously it's we don't know this for certain, but let's say he's up against Doku. That, I mean, again, without being Defcon genius at this point in time, we still don't know. And that feels instinctively to me like an opportunity to get a lot of tackles in. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not beyond reason that he might be able to pick something up there as well as the set pieces. So, yeah, he's in for me as well. I'll read out my team: Sanchez in goal, Porro, Steve, Electric Steve, Murillo, Palmer, Wirtz, Captain Salah at the moment, Reinders, Bruno Fernandes, Fulkrug, Gulp. And Watkins with Dubravka, Anderson, Rodon, and Gooey on the bench. I mean, actually, I can see a reality on Friday night where we've heard that Fulkrug's benched and Anderson comes in, strangely enough. So I'm going to be watching for that on Friday night. So that's one of the things I'll be thinking about before deadline, because it could easily be the case. I don't expect it to be the case. And of course, he's getting 90 minutes now. So whatever one thinks of him, that's positive news if you do own. Obviously, my choices probably are third defender and which goalkeeper. I don't take that question that seriously, to tell you the truth. I think, you know, I'd have to go a long way to think that it wasn't just a good idea to play Chelsea against almost anyone, really, and West Ham don't look that good going forward based on recent evidence. So I think that's probably as it will be. It's just the captaincy, really. I'm going to put all of my thought into thinking about that. But I don't know. Any thoughts about the defenders or goalkeeper scenario? Do you think I've got that right there?
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying for me, as you know, Rich, because that was kind of my decision we talked about on deadline was, do I go with everything else kind of decided? Do I go Murillo or do I go down to like a Williams and get a better keeper, which would have been Sanchez? Really annoying because I'm already like points behind on that and feel like going to be further points behind it because Chelsea are just ridiculous in defence. So I would play him as well. Whereas I'm there with bloody Burnley goalkeeper. So
I mean, not finding that $500,000 to do Fulkrug up, you know, really is really annoying now because I have to wait for another week at least to see what to do about that. But there's lots of eventualities. I mean, Alon, you'll know this. I was kind of very close to the 4-5-1 structure, strangely. I'm kind of glad I didn't because I think that already the bench would have looked unbelievably light at this point in time. But I would have much preferred Cucurella there instead of Fulkrug. So just on that particular score. But what can you do?
You wouldn't consider Fulkrug to Thiago?
No, not this week. No. I'd rather give it one more.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not pushing either way. I'm just surprised you're not considering it.
If everything was equal and free and all the rest of it, yes, I probably would. But no, I don't think it's worth it just yet. Yeah, I'll probably just give it one more. But if anything, I'd rather make room to switch that spot up somehow. So I would much prefer a Strand Larsen. So I'm jealous of that, Danny. Or it could be something else. It could be a restructuring. I wouldn't be surprised if I take some money out of somewhere else to bump that spot up. I'm not really sure, but definitely worth waiting, I think.
I hope he scores. I need him to bloody score because I actually do feel incredibly good about that pick. I know. Van Larsen is everything you want in a. Well, I mean, I just really like him as a cheap pick.
Do we think he has pens? Do you think he has pens?
I mean, to be honest with you, Arias isn't starting, is he yet? So.
Well, but City are weird. Like teams will put out weird lineups for City often. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's their way forward.
He probably. I mean, it's when you're the big focal point and the number 9, you don't really want to stand on the side of the penalty box, do you, and watch some midfielder take it because you're going to think, well, who am I? What am I doing if I'm not?
Right.
So. Really, a number 9, if there isn't an obvious candidate, should be saying it's mine.
I think so too.
Give me the ball,
Yeah, I should think about Strand Larsen, honestly. Between him, maybe Thiago, or maybe no move for Jimenez it's all I have to think about. Yeah.
But based on what I've seen, so I mean, again, with the limited evidence and whatever, I think Strand Larsen looks considerably better than Thiago as a pick. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, he got real chances. Like all game. They were crossing everything to him, so that's a good sign. Yeah.
So we shall see.
All right, boys.
Right.
Yeah.
we've definitely got a
Okay.
call.
Well. Yeah. Sorry. Again, apologise to anyone that you need to. We'll make it up to you somehow. But
we just love talking to each other about football.
That's the bottom line. Yeah.
Is what it is.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us again, Alon, and Danny. I hope you have an improved week this week as well, and we all come away with what we want. Perhaps Strand will show us what he's been practicing last week. Cool. Okay. I'll get this out there. Audio will be up at some point in the morning. But yeah, everyone have a good game week 1 and game week 2 rather. I'm tired. That's the problem. That point. It's my bedtime. Danny knows this. I'm an early kind of sleeper. So what can you do? All right. Have a good week, game week 2, and we'll see you all soon.
Cheers.
Laters.